And ladies and gentlemen, we are now live.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's November 4th, 2020 at 6:02 p.m. And this is the Town of Silverton budget work session. Kelly, if you could do a roll call, please, that would be great.
Trustee Barella?
Here.
Trustee Harper? Trustee Wiggert? Trustee Bierma?
Here.
Trustee Lashley?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Here.
Mayor Furman?
Here. Administrator Ryder, over to you.
Okay, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's start by going through changes to the 2020 projection and the 2021 budget that we've made since the last work session with brief explanation. In the tab, in the worksheet, the spreadsheet I sent you, there is a tab called Changes that is right here that'll give those all those changes in detail that I'll touch on in the next 5 minutes or so. I'll highlight the first thing that once again, October sales tax that was collected for August was stronger than anticipated. That is a continuing trend. So that number is actual. These two are estimates. We're waiting in the next couple of days. We'll receive the actuals for November. I won't be surprised if they are higher than the $140,000 projection, but we shall see. Going down, why don't we, let's do the projections first. So anything that changed in the projection, I'm just going to go through here real quick. In fact, let me freeze these panes here so that it's easier for you to follow.
John,
Okay,
do you want to field questions as we go along here, or you want us to wait till some good breaking points here?
Let's do questions as we go along.
Okay, I just was curious. So the county's sales tax numbers actually looked like they were up for the county, and it still looks like ours are maybe a little lower than they were projected. And I think the counties were like 2.5% up. Do you have any reason why that might be, or?
Well, ours are going to be up too. I think this number 192 is over August of last year by about the same margin. As I said, Trustee Lashley, these are kind of guesses, kind of based on last year adjusted for COVID. September, this November is what we'd be collecting on September. And the reports I'm getting is that everything remains strong. There were lulls in September, just either days off, even businesses closing to take a break, that type of thing, and just tourism lull. But it's a guessing game, but I would stand by, I'm not sure that we're not going to see this number be quite a bit higher. And then December, we're collecting on October. October remains strong. So it's kind of a guessing game, but we have been the last couple of months been in that 2.5%, 3% over last year range.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to push page down to changes in the projection here, which I've highlighted in orange. This change is for our planning director. Our planning director has a unique situation in that without getting too personal, her family benefits from a state insurance package so long as her base salary stays below a certain amount. So I factored in a bonus for our planning director there, which I think she richly deserves, so that we could recognize her efforts without compromising her personal insurance situation. So that changed. We'll point out in the joint county town part of the discussion tonight, the county is not in a position to pick up half of that bonus per my discussions with Willie Tookie. So just to be transparent and let you know, town would be proposing to pick up the entire amount there. I put in $5,000 into the modular operating supply. Superintendent Kim White approached me late last week, and we took a look at the modular, and she is proposing with some minor modifications, and this is a guesstimate. Once I get John Seitz and Bill McDougall back in town, we're going to take a closer look. What she's proposing is we use it for food bank storage. They're ramping up to do another food bank distribution here as we head into winter, and there are needy folks. We have grant monies to purchase food, and we have grant monies to actually fund a position that will assist in the distribution of food. That was mostly a school and volunteer effort last year. We were fortunate enough to get a Help Colorado Now grant through a collaborative grant application that will be used partially to fund a position that will have other responsibilities, but will also be the coordinator of food bank distributions to families, as we head into the winter and that becomes a need. The 5,000 that town is proposing in this revised projection is to do cleanup and build a ramp to make it ADA accessible. We need to change out some toilet facilities because they are the ones installed currently for its previous use, which was a preschool. So they're kind of little kid facilities, for lack of better terminology. And, maybe some painting and carpeting, but one half of it would be used just for the storage. We've lost the Grand Imperial's ballroom for storage, and the school is getting cramped with it being open up. We had used their gym and other space to store food. So that's a proposal on the table that I'm supporting to bring to the board for consideration. I think it's a neat way to get this new position kicked off right, give a convenient, easy onload, offload place to store food before distribution, and represents a pretty strong collaborative effort through grant funding, the school's work, a new position that will be coming on shortly, and town. So that is for your consideration, and that number, I don't suspect it will go up, but it may come down a little bit depending on what my resident construction experts, think need to be done, that we'll be evaluating as those guys get back into town.
I have a question, John. Can we go back up to Lisa Adair for the planner?
Yep.
Because it looks to me as though it's raised considerably for the 2021 budget. You passed it. Go down just a bit. Where'd it go?
Yeah, in the 2021 budget, the big increase is there. So,
but is that going to push her over as well? So do we need to make sure that we adjust that correctly? Because right now the salary adjustment can't be over what it's at, and that's over by.
Yes, yeah, her salary proposed for 2021 it has in there, another performance type budgeted in. It would be based on performance. The big increase in the overall category in 2021 is the addition of this assistant planning director, which I put in to see what it would look like. And we'll get into this more in the 2021 budget discussion, and a discussion I had with Administrator Tookie. Again, the county is not going to be in a position financially to support paying half of an assistant planner. So this is where we get a little fluid, guys. So I'm showing you a budget that's already changed. I'll give you updates on Monday. I had a good meeting with Administrator Tookie Monday afternoon and have taken this position out. Willie had a great idea to seek assistance from DOLA and a couple of programs he's aware of that they have. One's called the Best and Brightest, where you can bring it in at no or low cost college type students looking for experience in these type of fields. They also have people on staff that can help with ordinance revision, which I think could be a big help to get things off of Lisa's plate. The overall goal here is we've heard her pleas for help. She's very busy. She's doing the best she can, but she needs some assistance. And Willie and I also talked about some things we'll discuss with Lisa in review process, to get some additional things redirected off her plate. So the next incarnation of the budget you see will not include this $26,000 charge, getting the planning department back, to where it's been the last couple of years, but understanding that we have some work to do to continue to find assistance for Lisa and to some extent Bill McDougall, because they are definitely not getting any less busy. And we need to see if we can find some help from the outside. And I think Willie's ideas are going to be great to pursue and see if we can accomplish.
Just one quick note on that. I think that just something to keep in the back of our minds for Lisa is that if we get her outside help too, there's a lot of work on her plate as far as training people, directing and managing another employee, and how useful that person can really be, you know, and ways to kind of help mitigate that kind of responsibility for her would help too.
Yeah, totally understood. And Willie has worked in his former role as the town planner with some of these programs. And I will definitely seek his, guidance not to have this become a 3-month training exercise. Yeah, I totally hear you, Trustee Lashley, and we'll definitely work on ways to mitigate that and make it a smooth transition to real help. Appreciate the comment.
Was there any discussion from the county's role for the kind of administrative assistant that they hired, which I believe right now is Heather McDougall, being able to help Lisa in some of her role as well?
We didn't have that specific discussion, but I can.
It's just worth bringing up. Willie may say, hey, she's got a whole lot going on. It's just one other person that may be able to provide a little assistance and take a little bit off of Lisa's plate.
I'll take that. I'll definitely take that up with Willie. Okay, so stop me if you have anything else, but I'm just going to kind of float through the changes to the 2020 here for now. Then we'll go circle back through 2021. We have, as you know, a bit of a compensation structure mishmash over here. We have a couple employees, particularly Lisa Branner, who is building up quite a bit of comp time. I had a question from one of the board about, how are we going to handle what is a growing liability in town books? So I've built in at least a partial payment. So we have, regular employees. Their staff. I don't want to get too much into this at the pleasure of the board because we do have limited time and there's a much bigger issue here that needs to be solved. But we have employees who are exempt and non-exempt. We have employees that have a combination of both or a hybrid of both. Non-exempt employees get overtime at time and a half. Exempt employees do not get any overtime by law. We've evolved here over the last several years, I think, for a noble effort to recognize hours spent in the comp time program. If you work 60 hours in 1 week and you can work 20 hours in the next, great. It evens out to 80 hours. What we're experiencing here is through the COVID year, a lot of people, many of our staff haven't been able to take off a whole lot of time. And so comp time is one area that's getting big. Our communications director's in a hybrid situation that unfortunately, hasn't been memorialized in any kind of written contract when she was hired. Her role has evolved. She's added a lot of things, building up a balance. So to answer one of the questions of how do we keep our liability that doesn't necessarily show up in the budget, which is, $70,000 to $75,000 plus right now. How do we start to mitigate if we can't have our employees balancing comp time within a year? Comp time expires in the year you earn it. If you don't use it, you lose it, which doesn't seem real fair given this COVID situation. So I've been working on and using this position kind of as a guinea pig to come up with some equitable solution to be fair to town and fair to the employee for the work that's been happening, particularly during this year when it's been tough for people to take regular time off. So there is a placeholder there for that amount that we changed since the last budget.
I agree that we've definitely got to do something here. This has been something that's been talked about since long before I was on the board, and it's a noble effort, John, for you to tackle it. I don't think that necessarily like use it or lose it within a year, but maybe like capping it. And if you reach a certain threshold, you know, and you cross it into the new year, then that time potentially gets paid out. But that way, employees are still able to bank some time off for the upcoming year. That often our winter time is a little bit slower, especially coming into that like March and April time and spring, and that's a great time for employees to kind of take vacations then. But
it's possible, and I'll work. Not all of our employees are in this situation, so it's just a couple. You know, there's also an option of just extending the deadline under these unique circumstances. Let's extend, you know, whatever you haven't used or part of what you haven't used into next year and keep it intact, so that if time becomes available to take it off and balance it out, we could do something like that too. But yeah, Trustee Lashley, absolutely. It does need to be addressed. Like literally right before COVID, we started, I think we even had a work session on it to start getting the framework of where we're at today, where we need to go, how to solve this fairly, because, you know, we're probably borderline, you know, violating certain provisions of the Labor Act, just with our designations of exempt and non-exempt that have evolved into hybrid, all done, I think, for noble reasons and right reasons, but we need to get it consistent and consistently applied and make proper designations between exempt and non-exempt, make whatever adjustments we need to be fair to employees, and then we can be clean going forward. Okay, that's it for the projection. Keep your fingers crossed. I'll let you know in a day or so here what that November number actually looks like, and we may gain some ground. Okay, 2021 budget, specific changes made since the last that we looked at on October 5th. These numbers here, of course, correspond with the numbers listed here. If you need to go back and review something, I'll run through highlights. You know, this was just adjusted to match more or less what we got in 2020. We don't think there's any reason to believe that number will go down or up significantly, so we're keeping it hovering around the same. Marijuana sales tax, I bumped up. We've had some really strong collections here in September, maybe one of our highest months ever. And again, you know, we're projecting to collect almost 12. I've got 11 up from a number we had in there before that I think was 5 or 6, but the marijuana sales tax has, the sales obviously have been strong, and we would expect that to continue. We had some, you know, a store opened in a bigger location and so forth. So, and the visitors that came through no doubt contributed to that. Severance tax, same thing. You know, that's an actual number. That's what we've collected in 2020. We're not anticipating any more collections on the severance tax, so we're keeping it the same as last year. That's up from the last budget. Number 4 here, again, same thing, trying to come in conservative, but right around the same amount, you know, only $125 difference for the professional and occupational licenses. Shared services we're going to talk about tonight. I'll give you a brief overview. So we share expenses with the county. We pay 60% of the sheriff's budget to start out with for the year, and we make 12 equal payments based on that budget. Then come the end of the year, we reconcile to the actual number. In the sheriff's department in particular, financially good news, because Sheriff Conrad ran most of the year without a full staff, two deputies down for most of the year. We're anticipating a $48,000 return to the town based on what it paid per last year's budget, if that makes sense. You'll see that in the next incarnation of the budget. The other shared services are things like the ambulance and the fireman's pension. Obviously from our side, the planning director department, building inspector department, all of these things we pay 50-50. It looks like we will owe the town a little money from what we budgeted, and to reconcile, we're anticipating about a $13,000 return of money to the county for those services. You'll see that in greater detail tonight. I hadn't updated anything in this budget, but there'll be approximately a $13,000 negative there and a $48,000 positive on the sheriff's budget line item in the next budget incarnation. So net money to the town it's not always for the right reasons. There's always a little true up for actuals between the building and planning and ambulance, and pension fund stays pretty much the same. But, you know, keep in mind as we get into the sheriff's budget a little later tonight, he was operating significantly short-staffed for most of 2020 and is hoping to restore that to full staff in 2021. Penalty and assessment, simply matching what we collected this year. You know, that number could go up. We're considering, and we'll be asking the board to consider here probably early in 2021 to maybe consider some increases to our, you know, speeding, OHV violation, a number of fees. We think there's room to grow the fees, not only as a revenue generator, but as a deterrent to keep people following OHV provisional rules and regulations a little more stringently. We're proposing to start publishing that fee schedule in brochures and websites and maps, so that we're saying, hey, you know, not only are the fees pretty steep, and I need to confer with Sheriff Conrad and others on this before we bring it to the board, but we think there's room to raise some of those fees, you know, to act as more of a deterrent, and in the event of violation, generate more revenue. But in the meantime, till I have those conversations and see if they really materialize, we're just being conservative to keep it similar to last year. Okay, I did raise COVID-related expenses. I think after thought, that's wise. I have offset that. We had great success getting grant monies this year alone, just for food and rent and masks and sanitizer. Town alone got $35,000 in grants. That was augmented by another $25,000. The town was part of a $100,000 collaboration, of which we received or are allocated $25,000 specifically. We're going to allocate that toward rent and utilities again. But we've been very successful with Help Colorado Now. I just wrote a report back to them, the great benefit it brought to this community in buying the masks and buying the sanitizer for free distribution to our businesses. So I feel pretty good about our grant chances now that we're in the groove, and, you know, we've got a gross amount of $20,000. Again, pretty close to what we spent in 2020 to keep up food, utility, and personal protection equipment programs. Of course, if something great happens and we don't need to use it, we'll use it, or we won't use it. Okay, partnering, let's talk about this a little bit. What is included in here is the Baker's Park commitment of $10,000 and the ski joring commitment contingent to a contract and provisions if the event is not held, you know, it would come back to us. There are other partnering considerations here, so I'm going to go through a few of them. I believe that Region 9 and Small Business Center, they provide immense service to us, and the amounts are nominal. They're not in the budget now. Only the ones in orange are in the budget. Southwest Council of Government, I think, deserves some consideration. I'm just going to be honest. You know, outside of the work that they've done on fiber redundancy and certain other things like keeping up on cell phone generation 5 concerns and so forth, that the fiber redundancy is the one that's really important to us, and they do a great deal of work for us. We're projected to give them $3,500 in 2020. I haven't paid it yet, and they're requesting $4,700 for 2021. I would ask the board, or ask me to ask Administrator Tukey. He is a big supporter of this group and sees great value. And so I can be swayed, but we haven't included it in the budget as of yet. And I think it just needs to be considered, and maybe we have Willie give some commentary on what he sees as the strength of that group and more of the direct benefits he's seen to town. He's worked for them for years and has a great deal more experience than I do. But I'm just showing, these are all the requests. I included them in an email to you. Baker's Park is in the budget. Ski joring is in the budget. Senior Center, we've got a request, no specified amount. to use the modulars as a senior center. I'm going to recommend that we don't fund anything this year because unfortunately, because of COVID, the senior center, to upgrade the modular would be far more than $5,000 to make it suitable for a senior center. And I just think it's going to be completely limited in the amount of people that could use it at any given time, and COVID and monitoring and perhaps testing. And there's a lot of operational challenge and limitation to making that investment this year. So I put nothing there. The film office, you've seen they have requested, they again did not give a specified amount. I emailed Rebecca subsequent to her request and asked, and she said it would be great to get $2,000 to $5,000. So I put the lower amount there for your consideration. Again, we're getting into, right now the general fund deficit is $91,000 in this budget. In the next incarnation with the shared service adjustment and the removal of the administrative assistant, that number is going to drop to a deficit of $62,000. That is not insurmountable. That's not a big number compared to a $2 million plus budget, but I caution the board that we are getting, to where we're not going to be able to support some of these groups financially this year. And
Trustee Rowe? Sorry, John.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so going into some of these requests, the film office, are they going to be guaranteeing us approximately that much and more back in our fees to the film office? The people that come in to film something here, because if so, then it's a give and take. Then it's in the wash. And the senior center, I think this is something vital for our community moving forward, and a great use of that modular building. I would like to see something going in, but if you're already changing the toilet fixtures and so on, we're headed in the right direction for the use for the food bank. I see that as a positive thing going forward. So that way that the senior center and possibly an in-tandem youth center can eventually get into that building. Daycare support, we have a wonderful preschool. I think that would really be something for the preschool board to do. And I'm happy that we've got ski journeying in there. I hope we can get a contract in place soon. And Baker's Park, I know that's a really big chunk of change. It didn't seem like much last year, but I'm a little bit worried going forward into this next coming year, because what if we are still stuck in these COVID regulations? There again, we were hard pressed to do it this year. And I'm just worried that one is a really big ask 2 years in a row. So for everyone to just consider, I think it's an amazing project, and I'm glad we've gotten all the BLM through that, let it pass, but it's just a really big chunk of change 2 years in a row. So just things that are on my mind in reference to all these asks, but thank you.
No, from my perspective, I think that's a really great point. We're on the edge right now, and we're assuming that there's not going to be, we don't know. We don't know if there's an extended shutdown because of COVID and it extends into spring or summer. We're right back where we thought we were in April and May, and we're going to have to go into a cost cutting. Ski joring comes up here pretty quickly, but we have a contingency, either not to pay it or to have them return it. We'll have it in the contract if the event doesn't happen. Baker's Park is scheduled a little bit later in the year next year because they're not going to start work until spring or early summer. So when we make ultimately these commitments or do it, I do think that all of them are going to have some kind of a contract and a provision that says this is subject to review and subject to cancellation because of the unknowns here we're dealing with.
Trustee Lashley?
Thank you. couple thoughts on this regarding the use of the modular as a senior center. I think that's a conversation that we need to have as a larger conversation about the use of that building. I support the use of it for community benefits, but I also think that there have been some other ideas brought to the table that could be revenue generating for the town that could work alongside of a senior center idea if we could schedule it out. But if we had the ability to have classroom space for some of these groups to meet and the ability to make revenue off of that, I think it's just worth considering and having the discussion of the use of that building. And I think it should be an agenda item that we should just discuss during a regular meeting. I had just a question regarding the 4th of July fund as well. 30,000 is a little bit larger than we've paid in the past. Does that include some of our in-kind things like the dumpsters and the toilets? Bruce had $4,000 to each the county and the town in his budget, in addition for extra law enforcement for the 4th of July. I'm just curious how we came at the number of 30,000 this year for that.
So at the 2 years ago, when the 4th of July committee was formed, we committed to $15,000 contribution to that committee for its general operating budget. Then at a later date that first year, the town committed to supply the extra Porta-San units that we need for the 4th of July event, and that totals about $15,000 a year. None of these financial amounts include any kind of in-kind staff work, and so that should be noted. So we, in hopes that we'll do the 4th of July as we do traditionally this year, and mimicking the commitment we've made 2 years ago when the 4th of July committee was formed, that's where the 30,000 comes from. It's just simply talking to a committee member, the contract for the 4th of July committee has expired as of September. It was a 2-year contract, so that'll need to be considered here. It hasn't been a hot topic with COVID, and who knows what's going to happen. This budget as of right now is assuming we would return to the traditional setup, and we would return to the traditional event that we throw for the 4th of July.
I have a question about that.
Trustee Brella had her hand up first. I know that we can't see each other with the screen share easily. So Trustee
Yeah,
Brella and
sorry.
then Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
I'll defer and listen to what Sally has to say, please.
My question was, is that a similar setup as the ski drawing, where if the 4th of July events were canceled, then the funds are back in the general fund again?
Yeah, and that one was, more predictable, just because we had time building up to last year where it became pretty obvious, probably a good month before the event that it was canceled. And so those monies just weren't distributed to the committee. We did incur some costs because we brought in a handful of extra porta potties, just in case, and it wound up being a wise decision, but it was a $3,000 or $4,000 expense to bring in the extra, because we wound up getting a lot of people, even though the normal 4th event didn't show. But yes, Mayor Pro Tem, that would be subject to the event actually happening.
Trustee Brella.
So yeah, I did speak to Administrator Ryder earlier today about this because the contract is up. Jess and Austin, and of course, Trustee Harper would remember it because Trustee Harper is also on the 4th of July Association with me. Yeah, we built it in there so that it was like if nothing happened, nothing would be paid. So that's why I said if we took the framework of the 4th of July Association for ski drawing, then whatever sponsorship is there, it's always a given that if the event doesn't go off, that the monies don't have to be exchanged. And I think I said that very strongly last meeting that we had about the budget, to make sure if we have these contracts into place, it's very easy to keep things into the budget. And the rest is what is spent for porta potties, as Administrator pointed out. And that was included the fee for 4th of July Association to run all of the auxiliary camping. Let's not forget that, which in turn that the association pays back the bed tax to the town of Silverton. So that's where, to the best of my knowledge, most of that comes from. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a couple quick thoughts as well. So framing first, I'm trying to look at these as investments relative to expenses. What of these things can turn around and actually create more income for the town? And with that in mind, the film office is a great example of somewhere where we could see significant future income for the town on many levels. But I don't think contributing the 2,000 speculatively on the assumption that it does that necessarily makes sense. But one thing we could consider is offering back the first $2,000 of fees the town receives from projects that come through, so that we still make that contribution, but it isn't coming out of the funds we have today. It comes out of future revenue as it's generated. Similarly, Baker's Park, at the 20,000 that the town has committed to date, I think we've provided 5, we owe 5 from this year and another 10 next year. That's a permanent infrastructure project that my understanding isn't intended to require much upkeep or cost for the town going forward, and that committing those funds can't really be a contingent commitment, because those are going to be used as matching funds for grants. And if that funding goes away, the grants go away. And I see that as a huge revenue generator for the town potentially. Ski touring, I think, is also an investment. And I understand that that money can come back if the event doesn't happen. I'm wondering if we can look at that as, something as well, where we kick back funds after the fact based on revenue generated, as opposed to committing funds that we have today towards it. And that's, yep, those are all my thoughts. Thank you. Trustee Barella and Trustee Lashley, I see hands up, and Trustee Harper. I'm not sure what order.
So I guess that was kind of my point, was the reciprocation between the film office and the monies coming in. So I like the idea of just saying that the first 2,000 is deferred. But at the same time, what if that's only one company and she's got 5 coming in? So if we spread it out equally over, whatever it needs to be, but how do we know? And then as to—
Trustee Barella, I think—
Can I finish?
Oh, I thought we could just exchange back and forth on that one, but if you'd like to finish the full statement, then sure.
That's fine. Thank you for clarifying what you wanted to do.
So just a clarification, I think, my understanding is that $2,000 isn't being asked for to provide a benefit directly to a company coming in, but it's for the film office to support itself with respect to its operations. And so instead of the town giving them $2,000 for operations, we would just give them back $2,000 of fees earned from those other companies that come in and pay them to use, the town's property or other things like that.
That's what I'm saying. What if it's only one company and they only drop $500? How are you deferring 2,000? That was the whole
So they
point.
would just get the 500.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. If we word it correctly, I'm all for it.
Cool.
And then Baker's Park, what contribution is the county giving? Maybe this is something that we need to ask in the next section with the rest of the.
To my knowledge, the county has already funded $11,000 for some upfront grant matching. I know they have. I'm just trying to remember specifically what the grant, if Lisa Branner has some insight on that, I'd invite her to speak, but I do know the county has made an $11,000 contribution to date to that project.
Okay, so because as long as we're on equal footing in reference to the town and the county, because most of this is in the county, even though the town obviously reaps the benefits from the additional people coming in and staying in hotels and eating in restaurants. I'd like to make sure that we stay on a pretty even level with the county in reference to Baker's Park. So if they're getting, 5,000 from the county, then 5,000 from us would still keep them in those matching funds sort of ways. I don't want to take away from them, but I just think that's a really big budgetary item that going into COVID, do we know if we can even start the projects? There's just a lot of, I don't know, everything this year is a lot of what ifs. And I just want to make sure that we always keep that in mind going forward, because we could be all shut down again and there goes our revenues again. So I just want to make sure everybody kind of puts that in the back of their minds. Thank you.
Yes. A great point, and that this needs to be looked through the lens of a variety of scenarios. This is more of a better case repeat of this year's scenario that's factored into this budget, but we can make a hard left turn, you know, depending what the future holds. Unfortunately, we have a year of this under our belt where we established tools and projection tools and turned over every rock, and we're prepared, you know, to do more dramatic things if necessary. So we have some experience as we live week to week and sometimes even day to day. Certainly staff, you know, to know where the cuts would have to come and come quickly should we get into trouble.
Thank you. Just noting 17 minutes left before the county portion of the joint meeting starts, and that I saw hands from Trustee Harper and Trustee Lashley for further comment.
Trustee Lashley had his hand up first.
Oh, no, go ahead, Jim. I've talked enough this meeting. What I'd like to hear from you first, if you don't mind.
Oh, my question was kind of off topic a little bit. Miriam with the Council of Governments, I like her. I like what they do. Shane, I like what you were saying about investing and reinvesting, and are we investing in these partnerships? John, what do we actually get out of $4,700? Is it just representation with the Southwest Council of Governments?
The most direct benefit I can see is that they've really taken on the lead for fiber redundancy.
Okay.
And starting to do the legwork and the groundwork for making that happen. Willie Tookie for years now has worked with them on that specific project, and they were instrumental in getting it here to town. And the next step that I see as a direct and important benefit to town is establishment of the redundant line, you know, coming up over from you, Ray. Beyond that, I have not seen a big direct benefit. I haven't asked them for anything. One thing specifically is we're potentially, you know, renegotiating our cell phone tower lease, and they were unfortunately not able to assist. So just being frank, I have not had the opportunity to ask them for anything that's within their area of expertise or work with on anything specific, any specific program that I saw that would directly benefit the town of Silverton outside of the very, quite frankly, very important work they do on furthering the fiber redundancy project.
I worked with her for years, bringing the fiber up from Durango. So, I mean, I know what they're capable of. I know what they do. I just, and I think Mayor Shane brought up a very interesting point about investing and what is our return on investment. And it's almost 5,000. And I just wanted to better understand what Miriam and the Southwest COG does for Silverton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we're running late, but Trustee Wiegert or Trustee Bierma, any comments so far?
Yeah, I like what you had to say about investing and stuff. I think, you know, Baker's Park and ski joring is super important to the community and brings in a lot of people. And I like your suggestion for the film office too. I think it's super important to support the film office in any way that we can. And, you know, I think paying back would be a good option for that.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have I'm just looking through here. I did increase the signage budget in streets from 5,000 to 15,000, just to be prepared for a more robust, it's going to be focused on OHV and parking restrictions. Front of the post office has been talked about quite a bit. Getting some bigger, more prominent OHV directional signage and no OHV allowed signs in strategic places, but I tripled that budget because the signs themselves aren't all that expensive. John Seitz and his crew normally can install those, within their normal budget, but I think there could be a lot of them, and we may to really start getting a handle. Again, it's a placeholder, but I did want to put a more robust budget in there so that we would be prepared. There's going to be OHV discussions coming up here and throughout the winter, and all kinds of things talked about. There could be educational signs, but just so you know, and if you don't object, let me get down there. I did bump that up as a fairly substantial bump up from last time, just to give us a bigger allocation for signage, because that was a big topic over and over, lots of different angles, that hit my office about the desperate need for more and better signage.
I'll jump in on this one. I object. I think that wayfinding is very important. I don't know that spending $10,000 additional dollars without having developed a thorough plan about how to spend that money ahead of time is the best use of funds, where we're talking about really being strategic in how we allocate dollars. I'm not sure what the forum is for talking about OHVs and wayfinding, but I think that that's an important discussion that we need to have before we commit funding to those issues. Personally, the idea of putting large signs all over town that are OHV specific diminishes the aesthetic of town. I was very grateful, despite the confusion that was caused, when the San Miguel Power folks took the OHV sign off the post directly in front of the front door of the Wyman. I now have a couple nice photos of the front of the Wyman, which I couldn't get before without some creative Photoshop. I didn't realize how pervasive those signs were till they were gone. I totally understand the terrible confusion that resulted, and we need to figure out how to address that. But I think we need to have that forum discussion and come up with a fully baked plan before we propose something that's, $10,000 here rather than some of the other allocations we've talked about, especially knowing that the county isn't going to support the additional costs that we're talking about related to the planning department and some of the other discretionary items that we've noted tonight.
I totally agree with everything you're saying, Mr. Mayor. And this was we don't have to spend it placeholder. So we wouldn't necessarily spend anything until we came up with a plan that seemed to make sense. It was merely putting, as I said, a little bit more significant money into, work towards something to solve some of the low-hanging fruit problems that, again, could we structure something that is a contributory element to the bigger wayfinding plan, so it's money well spent, that we wouldn't have to tear them all down and restart over and it's wasted money. But I hear what you're saying, and from the administrator standpoint, would be totally comfortable, lowering that to whatever the board thinks is a more appropriate placeholder, and totally agreeing that a plan would need to be developed and brought to the board, and just say, here's what we're saying. For example, the 15-minute parking in front of the post office probably is one of those no-brainer projects that the signage that would be installed, whatever, would be there for years and not have to be adjusted. But I'd open it up to your discussion, and I've got certainly no objection to lowering it or taking it out for now, or whatever you guys want to do.
I had a thought about that.
Yes, please.
Okay. I thought about taking a look at that wayfinding plan. It looked like a lot of that was it's a pretty expensive plan to implement. I would be okay with I would consider keeping the 15 in, knowing that if we were to allocate it sort of a little bit more specifically, so like whatever we think we need to sort of limp through and be communicative, and like post office signs sounds good. We're going to have to do that, but that's, I could see that staying under a couple $1,000s. And then if we wanted to just take a portion of the 15, say 10,000 or so, and just set it aside to move towards some savings or some matching grant funds or things like that to help us work towards a strategic plan to implement the wayfinding.
Great comments. I might also add, it just popped into my mind too. Yeah, we've got some signage requirements, over at our Ocean Lake wetland area, that we're going to have to explore. I don't know if there's going to be any specialty installation just to identify town property and some wetland cautionary signs. So that's another element, kind of in the TBD category, that the 15,000, the increase was intended to at least create some budget for. But no, I like the idea, and we can completely caveat that. I'll try to think. I do a budget write-up, a kind of a highlighted write-up as part of the final approval, and some of these things we might put into that memo just to keep it on the radar that, that's not 15,000 just to go spend and put signs. It's going to need to be a considered plan and brought to the board's, attention for approval. Because if we do wound up spending any amount on signs, we want it to be strategic and helpful. And lots of us are, I think there's too many signs already. So some of this budget may be used, quite frankly, to remove some signs that just aren't necessary. But I appreciate truly what everybody's saying. And again, I'm open to leaving it or caveating it or lowering it. Whatever you guys think is best.
Thank you. Trustee Birma and then Trustee Lashley.
Yeah, just for the sake of time, I was going to say I feel like beyond just signage, I feel like there is a bigger discussion about our general plans for OHVs and our plan for moving forward that I feel like would be pertinent to have sooner rather than later, perhaps at another meeting.
Thank you. Agreed. Trustee Lashley?
Yeah, the one suggestion that I have, trying to think of a creative way to kind of offset expenditures, especially regarding signage, is maybe we try to raise some funds another way. And the first way that I have here is that maybe we, in our discussion of the bump outs that we've been having, if we decide that's something we want to continue to allow every summer, that we charge a decent fee to those businesses who are going to be utilizing public right of way, and maybe allocate that money towards signage and a wayfinding plan.
Yeah,
Yep.
or fees from
I love
OHV, like the fees John was talking about earlier. From increasing OHV fees as a deterrent.
I think Austin's idea is absolutely fabulous. And then we'd have to allocate it directly to that, not going into general funds, but actually allocating it to put forth for wayfinding. I think that's an excellent idea. Thank you, Trustee Lashley.
Yeah. The other idea, which would be significantly less popular, but I do want to say kind of maybe it's not an idea that we should fully give up on, because there was some vocal opposition to it, is parking meters were a discussion that came up that the last administrator almost got crucified over. So be careful, John. But the numbers looked pretty good for potential revenue for the town, like in excess of $90,000 a year. So for potential of that, and that could potentially help. Maybe we could have, obviously you have to have somebody monitor it and enforce it. So maybe in addition to having somebody who is like a parking enforcer, they could also be the code enforcer as well and take a little bit of that work off of Bill McDougall's plate. But that's a discussion, I think, for another time. I'm not sure Silverton's ready for parking meters yet, but don't give up on it.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Lashley. I just was looking back on my whiteboard, and I've challenged staff, per previous discussions, creative revenue generators, anywhere from raising the marijuana tax to more consistent levels with our neighboring communities. Ours is 1%, everybody else is 5%. Parking meters is on that list, and I say that as gingerly as possible, but it is on the list of as we start to consider, up to a dozen ways to, starting out with, can we get the outside visiting world to pay as a goal, so we're not unduly burdening our residents and businesses, and, what are appropriate, consistent revenue generators in other communities that we just haven't caught up with. So that is another discussion, but just so you know, staff is listening and is working on it and has developed a list of a dozen items to start digging into, and that's on it.
Thank you, guys. Trustee Birma, and noting a 1-minute warning. You're muted. Trustee Birma, you're muted still.
Oh, I was just going to say, while people are throwing out ideas, I think a speculation or vacancy tax would be worth a larger discussion as well.
Say that again, Trustee Bierma.
Just that a speculation or vacancy tax would be worth a larger discussion.
I may not be speaking completely correctly here, but I do think that the county imposes some kind of vacancy tax on property already for property that's undeveloped, but that's definitely worth the discussion as well. I understand exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Well, trustees, thank you very much. I think that was a great discussion. Administrator Ryder, thanks for the overview of the updates. This sounds like a to be continued workshop. There still was a little bit left on our agenda we didn't get to, but I want to be cognizant of the commissioner's time as well. And yeah, if you want to do a closing kind of note.
Yeah, just that, yeah, the overview that we had in our talking point, we'll cover that completely with the county. Just for your perusal, was asked, what are some of our longer term, bigger financial commitments? That's in a tab in the budget that you received and will continue to be a tab. And projects, what are kind of some of the big things that we have budgeted for this year in that tab? Yes, it's been budgeted. No, it hasn't, but we started trying to put together a comprehensive list of things that we have thought about and are approaching in this budget, and things that are going to be considered in the near term and midterm future. And I'd like that to be a fluid list that any of you think of something, just let me know, and we'll continue to add and or subtract to that list, but as a way to answer some previous questions of, what are some of our big things built into this budget? What are some things we need to consider in future years' budgets? And, what are our current commitments on the heavy equipment in particular are included in these tabs for your review. And I thank you for all of your comments and input. Great discussion.
Thank you very much. And if you would end your screen share, we could kick off this. I'm sure we'll be doing another screen share. Perfect. We'll kick off this joint town-county budget work session. Welcome Commissioners Scott Fetchenheimer, Pete McKay, and Ernie Coleman, and welcome Administrator Tukey. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm very excited to have our first joint meeting since the new board has been elected. Congratulations to those that were re-elected and newly elected yesterday.
Thank you.
And I believe that Commissioner McKay will be running or facilitating this meeting, so I will pass the mic over to you.
You're muted.
And you're
Commissioner McKay.
muted.
There we go. Mirror your thoughts on an opportunity for a joint session. This one's budget, but we could do these 3 or 4 times a year. So really positive. I was listening to your discussion. It sounded like you were really digging into the weeds on some stuff. I think both town and county are challenged financially. So why don't we start our discussions knowing that we all have budget constraints. Willie, what would you like to start with?
I think probably let's just start with an overview of the shared services, what the town and county share, and since we have some new members on the town board, I think probably everybody's got somewhat of an understanding, but I think we're just going to go over it.
Hey, Willie, you're going to have to speak into the speaker a little bit more.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just think, let's kind of give an overview of the shared services, what they are, and just so that we're all starting on the same page. I think probably most people are pretty familiar with what they are, but let's just do a quick run through this. First of all, we do have the sheriff's department.
And Willie, if I could interject, would it be advantageous to put the summary up on the screen, or do you just want to walk through it? I think everybody's got the paper copies, but
let's just walk through it if everybody's got a copy. If we need to, you can put it up on the screen. So we have the sheriff's department. We have emergency services, which includes the fire authority and ambulance. And we have planning and the building code enforcement. We have the carriage house and the fire station that we share maintenance costs on. I think that's pretty much it. I think everyone got a copy of the current year's IGAs. We have one is a contract with the town and county and the sheriff for the law enforcement. And the other one is the town and county for the intergovernmental services. So if anybody has any questions on those or wants to ask any questions of how we got to where we got or why we're doing the things the way we do, be happy to answer those.
Hey, Willie, I just have one quick thing that I'd like you to explain to some of the newer members of the board and maybe some of the public who's watching. And that's just the escrow funds and how that kind of pertains to some of these emergency services and things like that.
Okay, the county is actually, for years, we've set up escrow funds to where every year the town and county put in whatever amount that is, maybe 10,000, maybe 20,000. But we do it for the replacement of sheriff's vehicle, for replacement of fire truck, and for replacement of ambulance. And as of this year, we've got a new ambulance on site, and we've got a new fire truck that should be delivered here shortly. So, and basically what we do is we use that escrow money as grant match to be able to purchase these vehicles. So they do get extremely expensive.
Thanks, Willie.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions?
Willie, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, for the benefit of our newer town board members, I wondered if you could just give, a brief overview of the history of the development of the 2.5% tax that's used for our emergency management services. An increase was voted in some years ago, and just briefly the mechanics of what that's used for. Because some of the budgets the town board will see that are related to our shared services also include, some much larger numbers that the county expends, but does in fact get to use the tax generated from the specialty tax. And if you could, I just think maybe a history and some detail on that, on how that work would be to the benefit of some of our new board members.
Sure. A few years ago, the county put on the ballot for voter approval to have a 1%, an increase of a 1% sales tax that would be collected countywide, that would be specifically earmarked for public safety and emergency services. So that includes fire, ambulance, sheriff, public health, search and rescue, as it's actually defined by state statute. It was initially pushed by the Ambulance Association and the fire department to generate that extra revenue. The county was the one that put it on the ballot. It's the, it's up to the county commissioners to decide how to actually spend that money, as long as it meets the state statute as public health and safety. Then a couple years later, we went back to the voters and asked for an increase of a 1.5% sales tax.
Thank you. I'll get a break in here. I'll find out.
And that was approved as well. So we're generating a good source of income from that sales tax, of which a large portion of it goes to the Ambulance Association. A large part of it is being used to pay for the fire station, and it will be used to make payments on the fire truck. Also, we're planning on some improvements to the fire station, basically the construction of a mezzanine to give the fire authority some office space and training space on the second floor. That should be happening sometime here shortly. What else did you need to know, John?
I think that was good. Hopefully that was beneficial to the newer trustees or those who hadn't understood the mechanics of that one. I know questions get asked about it, and thank you, Willie. I'd also, just like to say thank you.
Says mute.
Thank you to Sheriff Conrad, Chief Archuleta, and Kenneth Holland for the incredible job they've done this year, starting with the Great Divide Fire last Christmas, and now all through COVID and the pressures put on each of these departments. In Sheriff's case, unfortunately running with a short staff for virtually the whole year, dealing with COVID, Kimmett's group setting up testing and supporting the OEM effort. It's been an incredibly unique and tough year. And these leaders are coming forward to us with budgets that aren't significantly different from the last few years. the sheriff's budget. Understandably, his proposal this year has gone up, anticipating a full staff, but I think the whole community needs to say thank you to the incredible job these three leaders have done and adapted to the unique COVID challenges and fires and increase in service calls and emergencies and improving their departments each and every year. So I just wanted to say, as the boards consider budgets and expenditures, to remind ourselves these groups did a fantastic job and continue to do so.
Thanks, John, for saying that. And let's not forget Jim Donovan,
Yes,
who
of
is our
course.
emergency coordinator.
Thank
So
you, Commissioner
between the
McKay.
four of them, we've had
Can
stellar.
you hear me?
Yes, Ernie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just coming online.
Did you hear John Ryder congratulate our team?
And thank you, Commissioner McKay, for reminding of Jim Donovan and also Becky Joyce and their group's efforts. Just incredible.
At Deanne Gallegos.
Deanne Gallegos, yes.
Public Information Officer. So quite the team. And if we forget anybody, they're included in that. Thanks.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
okay. Does anybody have any more questions about the emergency service tax and how it's distributed or how we're saving portions of it for the future? Any other comments on that?
Pete, this is Ernie Coleman. I don't think that here. Yeah. We went over that pretty thoroughly. Can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's a nice close-up, Ernie.
Go ahead.
Hey, Pete.
Yes.
When I'm looking at are we looking at the governmental services agreement now, the expenditures?
I think this is a good time to do that.
Okay, the first question I have for Willie is on line 4, the fire protection escrow budgeted for 20,000. Is that the truck payment? I thought we were taking the money that we would have put into the escrow and we're actually making a truck payment. And are we doing an additional payment into escrow? Because I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, actually, there was a request last year for the additional funding from the fire authority to put extra money into the escrow fund. So that's where that's coming from.
So we're not only making the truck payment, but we're also putting into escrow. Is that correct?
We approved that for 2020.
That's what we approved for 2020?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. And then, and as far as fireman's pension, did we approve that last year? It doesn't show it being funded.
We did approve. We approved 30,000 out of the budget, and then again they requested additional funding that was approved by the emergency services.
Say that again, Willie.
Okay, we approved 15,000 from both the town and the county.
Gotcha.
And then the fire department had requested additional money from, if I remember right now, I have to go back and look at my notes, from the emergency service group, and they looked at the additional spending.
Which was a one-time.
Correct. Yeah, those are one-time.
Yeah, all those requests for one time. Okay, so but we are budgeting 30,000 for the pension this year. Is that correct?
That's what I've got in the budget is
15,000 town and county. Okay.
Yeah.
And that'll be the same as last year then.
Yeah.
Yes. Trustee Barella, I don't see you on the screen, but did you have some comments or questions, please?
Yes, I did.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mine was for Bruce, but I don't see him here anymore. I'm really concerned. We finally stocked our sheriff's department, and now I just want to make sure that we are doing everything possible to get him the help that he needs, and that we're recruiting in the right way. I don't know if he can hear or if he completely left the meeting. Does anybody know where Bruce went?
Yeah, I received a note from Trustee Harper that he received a call and will be back as quickly as he can.
Okay, then I'll defer it to when he comes back on. Thank you.
And Molly, are we feeling with the addition of his new deputy that he is fully staffed and is functioning well?
We lost a deputy. He was stocked, and now we have lost another one. So I wanted to make sure that we were in the right position moving forward, especially with the busy summers that we have been occurring, that we need to make sure whether it's just a full-time position, if it's a summer position, what do we need to get Bruce the help he needs? That was where my question under law enforcement was going. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Does anybody else have a question or a comment? I'm not seeing everybody's screenshot. All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney has a quick question.
Can I? Yeah, and you may be getting here, so just stop me if I'm ahead of myself. I just wondered if, as I get to know what government budgets are sort of like, if you had a plan or were able to just sort of explain how the county budget works, like in terms of just really general terms. So I know that, for example, with the town, I'm understanding where our income comes from, the income sources, the 7 funds that we work with, the different types of funds that those are. I just wondered if you would be willing to give us sort of a couple of minutes of an overview of how the budget in the county functions.
Oh, Willie, that's a big one. Willie, we'll talk about our revenue sources to start with.
Okay, 30-second budget recap here. Basically, the county's budget revenue sources are primarily, well, let me take a step back. The county's budget are actually several funds. One is the general fund, which is what we're talking about with joint services. We have the road and bridge fund, which is the crew maintaining the roads. We have a social service fund. We also have a conservation trust fund, which the town has as well, which is the money for parks and recreation that we get from GOCO. Those are, then we have the emergency service fund. That's actually a separate fund. We've set that up as a separate fund. And the Anvil Mountain apartments is set up as a separate fund, as similar to an enterprise fund like the town's water and sewer fund. Our primary source of revenue is property tax. We do get some, we do receive sales tax. Majority of our sales tax, I mean, we probably will net, or we'll probably have somewhere between 130 to 150,000 in sales tax that will go to the general fund this year. But the emergency service fund, is actually receives substantial sales tax in order to fund emergency services. We get a little bit of federal money, payment in lieu of taxes, which is under 100,000, and that is earmarked for road and bridge. And we get Federal Reserve money, Forest Service money, basically.
Secure rural schools.
In the secure rural schools, in the amount of little over 80,000, 80 to 90,000, of which 50% of that actually goes to the school district. we'll give half of that to the school. And then the highway or the road department's other main revenue source is highway users tax funds, which is essentially fuel tax. And it's based on a formula of number of roads, et cetera. We get probably a little over 300,000 a year on that.
Molly, did you have a thought?
I have a question really quick for Willie. With, oh God, whichever profit was about the Gallagher amendment, what do you see that having an effect on for our property taxes in town?
I think what it'll do is it will allow us to basically maintain our current level. If it hadn't passed, right now, residential properties taxed at a rate of 7 point something or another. And it had, under Gallagher, it had to maintain a ratio between residential and everything else. And so as residential got larger, that ratio or that value kept getting smaller. It was anticipated that probably next year's assessed value would have dropped down to about 5.5%, which would have hit us pretty substantially. So by being able to keep it at the current rate, it'll stabilize property tax revenue for us for the next few years anyway. I don't think it'll have any, I don't think it'll have any major impact on actually what property taxes are going to go. They will increase just because of, I'm assuming that it'll increase because of assessed values going up because property is selling at higher prices. So the assessed value is based on those sale prices. So, you'll probably see some increase based on that, but I don't think it'll be very significant.
Any other thoughts, Trustee Barella?
No, that was the question I had. Thank you.
Welcome. Let's circle back, if we don't mind, and talk with Chief Archuleta for a minute. Gilbert, you're with us tonight? Gilbert is muted. There you go.
I'm here.
Can you bring up your volume a little?
Is that better?
A little bit higher, please.
How's that?
That's really good. Gilbert, did you want to touch on the Emergency Service Fund, the fire authority's budget, the mezzanine, the new truck, anything at all while we're on this topic?
First of all, I'd like to give a quick update on the fire truck. It should be arriving in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's been a little behind schedule due to the COVID, but it's coming around. It's looking good. We should have it soon. Before I forget, I just want to make a big thanks to everybody, all the firefighters that came up to help out with the ice fire. I'd like to thank all them guys for being here. Our budget is basically the same as it was in the previous year. Through the Emergency Service Board, the last several years, we were able to meet and discuss what our other needs were. And at this time, we have not held a meeting. And from my understanding with Administrator Tukey is that he was basically just going to submit the exact same thing that was entered last year. Our biggest thing is, as I've said in the past couple of years, is to try to get as much money as we can into the retirement fund to entice younger people to join and to have a reason to join and have some kind of value after 5, 10 years, 15, 20 years. Just so everybody understands, increasing the pension fund does not benefit any of us that are there any more than anybody else. It's a 20-year plan. You put more than 20 years in, you make no more than if you put 20 in. So the biggest thing is the county's handling it now. It's in order, the reason we switched over to the county was because of the mill levy. DOLA will match more by the mill levy, and the mill levy for the county is twice as high as the city, so that'll give us more funds from the state. So that's how come we pushed that so hard. I think Scott was asking about the escrow account a while ago, and the reason we had asked the Emergency Service Board to put a little bit more in is because we're basically depleting our escrow account to use that money as matching funds for the DOLA grant for the new fire truck. So those are our biggest
Gilbert, how
concerns.
much did the fire truck cost us?
The fire truck was a total of, it's going to run approximately $536,000. $369,000 of that money is a match from DOLA. It's a 50-50 match. So with the escrow account, I believe it was $150,000 that'll be used as a match for that, and then the county will be financing the rest of it, and the payment for that will be approximately $20,000 a year, which will come out of the sales tax fund.
Gilbert, you brought up a good point, and let's have Willie touch on something, and then we'll go to Austin. Willie, you talked about the discretionary funds that we were able to disperse last year, and you had some thoughts about how to use that in the coming year. Could you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, what we've done the last couple of years is during budget season, the emergency service group, they have a committee, they meet, and everybody puts in their requests, and then they determine, we'll set an amount based on what we think the budget is going to bring in, and then they'll decide on what their priorities are and which groups get how much money, and then they'll bring the report back to the commissioners formally adopt it. Because of decrease in sales tax this year and uncertainty for next year, my thoughts are at this point is that I'm gonna put in the same amount in the budget as a placeholder, but not have any commitments to any expenditures on that until we actually see where the sales tax is gonna be roughly, midsummer, end of August, whatever, next year when the sales tax comes in, or we can see what's going to happen, and then have them meet, and we'll actually have a better idea instead of guessing how much money we're going to have in the budget or not. We'll actually have a better idea, have them meet, and still allow them to spend it in 2021, but we won't earmark any of that funding until we actually know where we're at. And then I think that actually puts us in a better place for the future, because we'll just kind of continue on that process. Every year we'll do it after we've got the money in the bank instead of guessing what's going to be in the bank.
Thanks, Willie. Gilbert, is that understandable? I think that's a good way to hold those funds for possible dispersal next year.
Yeah, it's understandable with what's happening now. I think it's the way to go, and I think what Willie's presenting is a good option.
Good, thanks, Chief. Austin, do you have a question or some thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Chief Archuleta what's becoming of the old truck? Is this one replacing another one in service, or do you guys keep that other truck kind of as a backup?
No, basically what we will be doing is we will be replacing the 1982 Ford, and it'll be put up for sale. It's valued at about $7,000. Those funds will go to put new hose and new supplies on the new truck.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Any more questions? Ernie, did you have any thoughts on the emergency service tax or anything related on this topic? Ernie, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I think the people of Silverton is going to be very impressed with the quality of equipment and the stuff that we have in the fire department when they get that new truck. This is one of the best trained and probably one of the best equipped small fire departments in the state of Colorado. And that also goes for the ambulance. I think we're in good shape. And it comes by escrow funds, putting money back so that you can match. And I think we're rolling pretty good.
All right, good. Any final thoughts before we move on to another topic? All right, let's talk about the sheriff's expenditures and that potential town-county split.
I don't see Sheriff Conrad back on the meeting yet. Is there anything else we can jump to give him an opportunity to be here while we talk about his
oh, sure.
His items?
Yeah, why don't we talk about the planning department and some various thoughts. Shane, I think maybe you could start that discussion with maybe what the town is thinking and how the county might be able to participate.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. This has been something that's been brought up within some of the different planning committee meetings. An administrator writer brought it to our attention recently as well, that the planning department is overextended with the amount of work that the town certainly, and I don't want to speak for the county, but I'm sure that there's quite a bit coming from the county as well with the increase in development that we've been seeing throughout Silverton and San Juan County this year. And that additional resources directed towards that department would be a benefit to the town and the county so that we don't end up backlogged with the work that's being assigned to that department. There had been earlier discussion of possibly separating town and county planning departments, but from input through the current planning department and conversations with both administrators, it sounds like that isn't a necessarily supported idea because there's so much overlap between the planning among the town and the county, and that perhaps if there are resources to direct to the planning department, it would be better to grow the department as a whole rather than try and have parallel departments. That would be more efficient, it sounds like, and less expensive or more cost effective. That said, the draft of the budget that the town just looked at had a placeholder for half of a planning assistant, not an administrative assistant, but someone who's actually trained in planning, but maybe not yet quite qualified to be a planning director all by themselves. But it sounds like the administrators, and maybe I should kick it over to Administrator Tukey or Administrator Ryder to finish out this thought. But it sounds like they connected and that the county doesn't have resources to devote to a 50-50 split on increasing the department by adding a role. But it would be great from a non-budget perspective to see some of the projects sitting in the planning department's purview get attention sooner than later. And so I kick it back to the administrators and the rest of the group to talk about how we might be able to devote resources to growing that department.
Thank you, Mayor. Administrator Ryder, did you have some ideas on what an assistant position might cost? And then let's go over to Willie on perhaps some options for bringing in some people to fill that.
Yeah, we developed an initial estimate of an all-in cost for an assistant planner type position with benefits at $52,000. At a 50-50 split, that would be about a $26,000 or $27,000 commitment between the town and county. Administrator Tukey and I had a really good conversation on Monday afternoon, where he expressed and I agree, both budgets under the current financial paradigm are tight, and we have some exploring to do, but Administrator Tukey, being a former planner himself and working with DOLA in particular as a support group, had some programs and ideas of which that entity alone, might be able to assist us in with a much lower financial commitment or no financial commitment. And we could strategically get things off of our planning director's plate. I think everybody recognizes the volume of work that has come in and is expected to grow with the popularity of Silverton growing. Many of them are uninitiated to the area, and so there's a great deal of calls and questions, and town has currently work to do on its ordinance to clear up conflicts and gray area and so forth that we are working on. But in the meantime, and the county has some of the same issues, particularly volume and complex projects. So anyway, we all recognize that something needs to be done, to help not only the planning director, but in turn the town and county, so that we're making sure that good projects get handled efficiently and go forward as appropriate. So anyway, Administrator Tookie, in conjunction with the planner, Lisa, we'll work together to see if we can bring in some more non-financial external help to take strategic things off the plate or help her do legwork. But I think Administrator Tookie had some good ideas that are definitely worth exploring before we commit or feel the absolute need to commit to a full-time position at cost.
Willie, did you have some ideas on programs that might be available?
Yeah, do you want to, Molly's got a question here.
Oh, sorry, Molly. Go ahead, Trustee Barella.
Thank you. I just want to say that's an excellent way to brainstorm, because Lisa has cried out for some help, and so has Bill. And we need to be able to take a little bit off of their plate so that they can continue with a good quality of work. So thank you both, Willie and John, for coming up with some very viable solutions. And I'd like to hear further from Willie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts that we're kicking around a little bit. Instead of actually hiring a person, part-time person to sit behind a desk, it may make more sense to actually contract with a professional firm, planning firm, to actually come in and really tackle the town's, particularly the town's ordinances and regulations, and put their professional expertise on that. From a budget standpoint, DOLA does have a program for technical assistance that could provide probably a substantial chunk of that money up front. It's at least worth exploring. I think it might help things actually move forward at a quicker pace than just bringing somebody on board, because I think if you bring somebody on board at halftime, they're probably going to kind of just get sucked into the day-to-day workload and the looking down the road and putting together the documents and the restrictions and the guidelines that you guys want, that the town wants for the future, is before you get too overwhelmed. Might not get lost in the shuffle. Another possibility, and both could actually happen, is DOLA also, and I think I haven't looked at the details for a couple of years, and COVID, of course, is throwing everything for a loop. But DOLA has what they call their Best and Brightest program, which is basically college students that are, into usually masters of public administration or planning or whatever, are looking for, as part of their finishing up their schooling and getting on the job experience, DOLA has set up a program where we would hire somebody, probably the town and county jointly, to take on some of the planning issues. They would pick up part of that salary. And in the past, we've had some of those people out of the Best and Brightest program. They've actually been exceptional. I know other communities in the region have used some, and they're always top notch. It's actually a competitive program. We have to sell what we're doing to the students because they generally have several places to choose from. And we'd have to put together a program that DOLA would approve, but I think that's a real possibility.
And is that something that could happen fairly fast, Willie, or is that a complete unknown?
I don't know because I don't know what DOLA's current schedule is for that. So it's more of a timing issue. It could be 2 months. It might be, 8 months in the road. I just don't know.
Okay. Well, listen, let's open it up to trustees and commissioners to verify that we want to keep the departments together, town and county. And then let's just have some talk about funding and anything else that's on anybody's mind. Scott, did you have a thought?
A couple things. This does sound like some good ideas. Hey, Willie, what was the name of that professional planning firm that talked to us a couple weeks ago?
Community Builders.
That's right. And that seemed like a good start, mainly because I know one of the things that has really bogged down Lisa is the master plan process for the town. She's been very bogged down by that. And I think if we could have somebody like Community Builders come in, because you first got to do a master plan, and then once you have your master plan, then you can base your regulations and zoning off the master plan, what the people of Silverton want. So it seems like a really good step, and that would really not only take the pressure off of her doing the master plan, but then it's going to help her in working on these regulations and zoning too. I think it's a really a good win situation, and those guys are a nonprofit, so it ends up being DOLA that would finance that entire amount. Is that correct?
They wouldn't fund the whole thing, but there's other funding sources. I mean, DOLA generally has a grant program for technical assistance, and they'll fund at least 50% of it. But as we, with our last meeting, our discussions with Mark Rudolph, he has the ability to find some money under brownfields grants that we could throw at that. They have because they are a nonprofit, they have the ability to find some foundation money to help out. There may be some COVID money. I think we could sell it as part of our economic recovery from being hit with this disaster. We've got to have our regulations in place type of thing. Other communities are doing similar things. So I think we could find some money there possibly. So yeah, there are some options.
And then in this Best and Brightest program, it sounds like you actually pay somebody. Now, I know some places have like an internship, and sometimes those internships are just part of their classroom experience and are not a paid position. Is that correct?
I think that happens in the Best and Brightest program is a paid, you actually give them a salary and
okay. But aren't there sometimes other programs that are not a paid program, like some type of internship where a person gets college credit for working for like a semester or something like that? Are there some things like with Fort Lewis or anything like that out there?
I know there are. I don't know that there's any, at least in this region, that's specifically designed towards government. They're generally private towards business.
Because the way I'm looking at that is if the kid can get college credit and we don't have to pay them, that's even better.
With the Best and Brightest, I think it's usually like a 2-year commitment. So it's you're getting them more than you're actually getting them into the community for a substantial period of time, as opposed to just a semester for a credit.
That makes more sense.
And I know just watching some of these best and brightest in the region, you know, by the time they're done with their program, the community is trying to figure out how to put them on payroll because they've done such an outstanding job. And usually they get picked up by a larger
I
community.
think, Willie, that happened to us here a number of years ago where we lost her. Austin, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, just in my conversations with our planner, Lisa, I think it's important for us to realize that having other people in a department is also a drain on her ability to kind of accomplish as much as she's doing now too, if we add in a kind of a management portion of another person in there too. So I think that the best and the brightest programs probably might work a little better as far as that goes, because somebody who's kind of an intern that's unpaid might require more supervision than it's worth for Lisa.
All right. Who else would like to comment? Ernie? You're on mute, Ernie. Try again, Ernie. There
Can
you
you
go.
hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I hope we can get something out of this meeting with the town. And one of my major concerns is, let's go forward. What does the town expect to do with the Anvil Mountain subdivision? There was for many years a consensus that it would be annexed by the town, and the county put in all of the specs on the utilities according to town specs with the anticipation that they would annex. Is that still a thought?
I know that's a little bit of a tangent, but let's pivot there. What does the town think about an annexation? Mayor? You're muted. Thanks.
You're muted again.
There we go. Yep. So tying it together, I actually think that's a great question that ties into some of the capacity issues we have with planning right now and how the town and county really are tied together in terms of supporting the planning department and figuring out how to get whatever resources they are to the planning department. And I thought that Commissioner Fetchenheimer's suggestion about looking at the group that Anthony brought to the table, community builders, as a possible resource as well, is awesome. And then to address Commissioner Coleman's question directly, I would love to see that annexation move forward relatively quickly. I think it's been unfortunate that those residents aren't able to vote in town elections, for example, and that's something that'd be nice to offer to those residents through the annexation process. But admittedly, I would defer to our two administrators on the line in terms of what the process is and the issues entailed with getting the annexation done. But everything that I've heard is that we're heading in that direction.
All right, thank you. Let's go with Jess. We haven't heard from you tonight.
Yeah, thank you. You know, this is a tangent on a budget meeting, but I believe when this question last came to the board 1.5 or 2 years ago, I inquired about if we could get some test results from MSI out there on the surface soil conditions to ensure that the town is not accepting some sort of liability here when we go to this annexation. And still, we haven't seen any results from any of those tests. I know MSI has been out there. I've been in contact with Marcy Bidwell, and she has been doing testing on the soil. And I think that the town is entitled to those results before we go ahead and go on with the full-blown annexation here. So I would urge us again to use caution.
Well, Jess, perhaps those results were in many years ago. Willie, would you like to comment on that? Brownsfield?
Not many years ago. I'm talking about the digging that was done there about 3 years ago for the apartment buildings. There was more testing done. There was more soil unearthed, and we haven't seen any results from those testing.
Okay, Trustee Barella, any thoughts on that topic?
I'll defer to listen to Willie's answer, please.
Willie, I'm not positive. I know what Jess is referring to, but please comment on that.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to remember exactly what, I mean, we've done a ton of testing out there. We've got all of that documented. Actually, the planner should have had all of that as well. But yeah, I'll put all that together and get it to the town. I mean, there actually isn't any liability to the town because it's still the property where the apartments are still belongs to the county and will always belong to the county unless somebody comes in and purchases them from us. The streets, you know, they were all. I mean, that's where the town's actually issue would be the streets because they would take over maintenance of those streets. The state has signed off on this, all the streets and lots as meeting the standards you know, that they set for us to achieve. So yeah, I'll be happy to make sure I pull all that together and get that to you. We did take and you know, and that's what I'm just trying to remember what exactly we did when we did the apartments. We did some additional testing in the area just to because we knew there were some hot spots back in those lots that we hadn't touched. And yeah, there's a couple of spots that were a little bit high, but it was, you know, it wasn't anything significant, nothing more than putting a little gravel over the top of them to mitigate it. So, but yeah, I'll be more than happy to.
Just let's feel that the two administrators will work on that, get that information together, get it to you and everybody, and then perhaps clarify that unknown. Trustee Barella?
Yeah, just one more thing. I just wanted to bring that up for some of the younger trustees out there, just so that they know where I'm coming from before we get full support here for this town annexation. We need to know everything that's going on out there.
Sure. Molly?
Going back to what Jess said, part of the holdup was first off the testing. Secondly, I don't think the communication had been there properly because we were in the midst of changing attorneys and now you have changed attorneys. So I think some of this has fallen through the cracks. That doesn't mean it's not something that isn't a priority for this discussion, but I do believe that just like how committees change and the board changes and so on, things just get a little bit lost and they don't always come full circle. So thank you, Ernie, for bringing that back up. And thank you, Jess, for putting it back in the forefront, because that was one of the major things when we hired our new attorney was his ability to understand and create a proper annexation with the town and county going forth. So I really think this is a big discussion, not necessarily for our budget, but we do need to do this quarterly. So what if we schedule it for the next quarter to make sure that is an actual agenda item? So by then we can have all of the information that is needed from all parties, including all of the attorneys. Thank you.
Scott, and then we'll go to Sally.
Okay. When these brownfield grants came in and when this brownfield works was done, their goal was to meet very strict controls as far as metal levels after that work was done. And there's no way CDPHE would have allowed us to build unless those levels have been met. Now, we'll have to find that information for you. I understand why the town would be wary about accepting a brownfield site, but this is a totally reclaimed site. And most of the digging, as far as I know, that was done out to those affordable rentals was done in a lot of it was in Faircrete, which is a rock type. It doesn't, it's impossible for it to be contaminated. unless there's soils right on top of it. But the paracrete itself is not contaminated. It's just an iron conglomerate. But CDPHE must have all that information of those standards that had to have been met to actually sign off completion, some type of completion on the brownfields reclamation, and before any building would be allowed.
Thank you, Scott. Trustee Barney.
Thanks. Does the rental income on the units down there meet or exceed the cost of the units?
Right now, we're breaking even.
And there are some vacant units. Is that correct?
Right now, we've got, we're actually at 11 units are full. So there's 12 units. So
Okay, so 11, or my question is, what is the break even rental on? Does it have to be at full capacity? It's 11 to break even, or? Sorry.
No, it's because those units are income qualified.
Yep, that's right.
I can't say, you know, if we're at, it depends on which units are full. If the market rates
sure
full, we're bringing it, we could have 3 market rates full and generate more money than
Yeah, and again, if I'm not mistaken, annexation doesn't involve taking possession of buildings. So annexation is a way to bring an adjoining county property into the town system. And as Ernie pointed out, we built these with the infrastructure required. Everywhere else in the world annexes things without much heartache. So while we could wait 4 months, and maybe that's a good thing, the county's been waiting for a decade or so, and it might be a way for the town to honor the county's commitment to affordable housing and rentals by moving forward on this project. So we have Mayor Furman, then we might move on after that. Shane?
Thanks. Yeah, I would just say that whether the work session happens in Q1 2021 or sometime sooner, it sounds like this is a sufficiently complicated topic, especially with the changeover of attorneys with both the town and the county since it started, to still schedule a work session between the town and the county specifically on this topic before we cruise ahead on it. I certainly have a bunch of questions, but not related to budget.
All right. Do we have any other, we're on a bit of a tangent here. If there's no more questions on the annexation, we had talked about the planner. Is there anybody that's objecting to keeping the planner as a joint position with town and county? Is there any objection there? Okay. Now, in terms of funding, we heard about some ideas about best and brightest or hiring professionals to come in for certain consultations. I'm not, and we'll get to Austin in a second, having talked with our finance officer, Willie Tukey, I'm not sure that the county could come in for much of an amount towards that position. We've talked about it a little bit. We'll again talk about it at our next county meeting. But if the county came in at a $2,000 or $3,000 buy-in to show skin in the game and appreciation, is the town going to be able to move forward on that? And if so, would we share those services on an informal cost-benefit basis, John?
I think, I don't know what the form of the agreement would be, probably dependent on the employee or person we hire, but probably it would require either an addendum to the IGA or a different IGA to formalize both sides' commitment.
And if we didn't find the best and the brightest, and if the county, say, was only able to come up with a $2,000 or $3,000 appreciation amount. Are you still prepared to move forward on that?
It just would depend on the overall cost, Commissioner McKay. We can commit certain funding, and we're prepared certainly to discuss, upwards of a $26,000 commitment. A lot of that, we're assuming to start out with overall, we're going to move into either a similar year that we had this year unexpectedly, or at least stability, but all that could change. So we are also being very cautious and careful, knowing that if something turns south on us again related to the COVID and impacts our economics, we would have to adjust our expectations.
Thank you. Austin,
But I guess I'm sorry to interrupt, to follow up though, it is a critical need to continue, ferreting out ideas to help the planning department and keep it running as smoothly as possible, because the planning department is truly an investment, to the town and county's future, because projects and interest in projects and the revenue and population growth, that we want to see appropriately, that's where it starts.
Thank you.
And so it is a critical need, and it may not return on our investment as immediately as we'd like, but in the long term, it almost certainly will. So there's a few variables that we'll have to continue to carefully consider and be ready to adjust as our economics allow.
Great. Austin, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I just was wondering if the county would be willing to provide maybe housing for an applicant, if that was an option, as kind of an in-kind ability to be able to kind of show support for this position, but maybe not, the cash contribution. Is that something that, if we needed or required housing for an applicant, that the county could help with?
I think that's a creative idea. Willie, you have a smile.
When Sean and I were talking, we threw that out as a possibility.
Good. I like that thinking, Austin. Scott?
That all depends as far as what's available in our rentals. If the only unit we have left is income related, we might not be able to rent that out to a best and brightest kid or a new hire or something like that. It just depends on what we have available.
Yes, I like that thinking outside the box though, Austin. Jim Harper, step up to the microphone.
Sir, yes, sir. I'm listening and taking notes.
All right, me too. Any other thoughts on the planner? It seems like there's a unanimous consensus that this is an absolute priority sooner than later, John. And I don't know if we're talking November, January, or first quarter, but let's keep this on the hot plate and see if we can keep this position solid. We still have the sheriff's budget to talk about.
I was just informed that he may not make it this evening at all based on the call that he's on. So I think we should just go ahead and discuss it.
Okay. Does everybody have sheriff expenditures in front of them?
Yep.
All right. And Trustee Barella, was that change in the department, losing a deputy? Is that something that was unexpected? Was that a part-time Durango person, or how is that affecting the department?
You'll have to forgive me for not putting on video. My computer is about to die. It was an unexpected deputy that left a couple days ago. And the last time we spoke to Bruce, when we had a financial meeting like this and they came in to talk, he was in such a good position and it looked like everything was moving forward with all of this. And so now I'm just alarmed that it happened again. It's really very frustrating. How do we keep good people? This was a great person. It wasn't his fault that, he's moved on, but what are we doing wrong? I guess is my question. We really have a need, and we've had some really great people coming in, but what do we need to do right to move forward? It's kind of difficult to put us back into this position. We have this cycle of, having great people and then they move on quickly. So what is it that we need? What is it that he needs? I think the pay rates are quite comparable based on, the seasonality of what we do. So that's what a lot of my questions were for him, because we've got a great ambulance department going forward. And I know that Kemet does a lot of recruiting. Gilbert is getting a lot of recruiting going with the new pensions. So what is it about the sheriff's department that we need to help bulk it up? That's my thoughts. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Willie, would you like to just touch on the sheriff's expenditures and the percentage split? And let's open up that for general discussion.
I assume everyone got the sheriff's expenditure page in their packet. So it's pretty basic. It's again real similar to what was budgeted last year. The primary difference was that we weren't anticipating. This year is actually anticipating 12 months of a full staff. Last year we had anticipated a couple of officers wouldn't start, for the first couple of months of the year. So we ratcheted it down a little bit. That was when we put this together. That was before we lost one deputy. And just to touch on that a little bit, our sheriff's department isn't the only department that's struggling with keeping officers. And that's part of the problem. I mean, everybody is looking for officers. So if you get somebody that's good, it's real easy for them to go down the street or down the road somewhere and get poached from another larger department with some room, for advancement, higher pay, whatever. And that's something we're going to be struggling with for a while. It's unfortunate. I know Bruce is really feeling good about actually having a full crew on for a change. But anyway, back to the budget. Again, the largest portion of that is actually personnel. We got fuel, dispatch service. If anybody's got any questions on that, jail has actually been amazing this year. Probably partially COVID related, but I think partially we just didn't have a lot of people to put in jail this year. And I think there's actually been some changes in statute that makes it easier for people to bond out, which is actually beneficial for our budget. I guess, just if anybody's got any questions on any of these line items, I'd be happy to go into them in a little more detail. They're pretty basic.
Does anybody have questions on the particulars of the sheriff's budget and expenditures? Okay. Does anybody? Yes, Scott.
I'm definitely dismayed, like Molly is also, is that it took Bruce a long time to fill these positions. I think a half year or more to fill these positions. So he was understaffed for a substantial time, and especially understaffed during peak summer hours, especially this summer, which was peaked out above many. So I feel like it's extremely unfortunate after all the time he spent trying to attract somebody here, finally gets a couple good deputies here, and then that deputy leaves after only being here about a month. That's a difficult thing. I know ambulance saw some of that, where not only was there, room for more advancement and more pay, but there's a lot of pressure on people getting backcountry calls because an example would be if you're a paramedic in Durango on a car accident and you need help, you can call for help. But in the backcountry, when you're responding maybe with one EMT and you need help, it's going to be difficult to get that help with, and that puts a lot of pressure on somebody in a lead position. And I think that's the reason we lost a couple people too, probably in ambulance. So those pressures of these, because many of our calls, both ambulance, fire with car accidents, different things like that. The sheriff's calls, some of them in these highway situations or backcountry ones are very intense calls, and they put a lot of pressure on the person that's responding to those calls.
Thank you, Scott. Any other comments in general on expenditures? Jim?
Sir, thank you. I was speaking the other day with some folks down at the La Plata County Sheriff's Office, and they're seeing the same issue with folks leaving and moving to different departments, different regions. And this would definitely be a Bruce-directed question, but are we competitive relatively in the workplace as far as salary? Is that something that we could do better at?
That's a good question. I think we are competitive in general, but we're always under others. So, all right, now let's talk about the, go ahead, Scott.
Just one other comment, and I've said it in years past, is that I'll ask Bruce when we get a chance, but really the ratio of calls is not a 60-40. It's probably a 70-30 or an 80-20. I know we'll probably keep financing it at 60-40, but it is observational that the town is taking most of Bruce's time as deputy's time. It's on his calls. It's purely observational, and I just wanted to pass that on.
Thank you. Austin?
Yeah, I think, looking at numbers of calls is only kind of one metric that you can really look at. I think that, the county calls tend to be bigger calls that Bruce may go out to be involved in, that may be a lot more time consuming, a lot more involved for resources. And so I don't know if just comparing numbers of calls is our best metric to do it. My kind of thought right now is that this is a system that works well enough, at least for our current situation now, and changing it in some way to be an independent law enforcement office for either the town or the county would be really difficult to staff and salary and all of the resources that those law enforcement officers need.
Thank you, Austin. Does anybody object to the split of 60-40 at this time?
I might add that Willie and I also discussed this in detail, and as Trustee Lashley points out, there's a number of variables, and we talked through them, the building inspector as well, and planning, and feel overall the best we can consider all those variables. These splits still remain close enough to being fair. We both want to, it would be great if we had a perfect world and they kept hours and more detail, but our instinct is that they're still within a fairness range that's appropriate.
Thanks, John. Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah, Pete, we had this thing and we put it to 60-40 because we couldn't get a sheriff's deputy to respond to anything in the county. They wanted to respond to everything in town. And I'm hoping that we've taken care of that. We got an Alpine officer in John this summer coming up, and we'll see. Thanks.
All right. Should we leave this topic as it is, with the expenditures as given, the split as currently positioned? And maybe we can move on to some open discussion on other topics. Any final thoughts from anybody?
Well, Pete, I'd like to see how Willie's going to do the budget. Is he going to figure in 2 other deputies that we don't have, or what?
You have one.
The current budget actually shows for full staffing. So.
So what happens to that if you don't fill those, and then you don't charge the town 60%?
Well, what happens is a couple things happen. Is, part of the budget shows reserve officers. So we do have a couple reserves from Durango, or one from LaPlata County that comes up and does. And then John Jacobs puts in additional shifts, as well as working as a backcountry ranger. So, if we don't hire somebody, those funds will be used to pay additional for their additional work. And then what happens is, and which will happen this year, because even though we budgeted for the new deputies to, not start at January 1, but to start later in the year, they actually ended up starting later than what we had anticipated. So we spent considerably less this year than what we had budgeted. And so after we close out the budget, next year, we will give the town a refund based on what our cost savings is in the sheriff's department based on that 40-60 split. So, if we save $20,000, they get 60% of that.
All right. Austin.
Just a quick note to the newer trustees here too. Bruce always comes in well underneath his budget. And usually there is some reserve and return that comes back to the town and the county at the end of the year from his budget.
Okay. I've hit the topics that I had on the agenda. I'd like to open it up for just some general discussion. Anybody can weigh in. There may be an idea of some sales tax, property tax redistribution, but let's open it up. Sally, what are you thinking?
I just had a question. This is a hot one. I'll try to be gentle. I'm curious about money that comes from the state to the county for OHV registrations. And I'm asking this question because when the idea about like OHV fees in town comes up, there's the reason that won't work that I've heard, and I just want to clarify this. I just want to understand this from a factual perspective, that the town can't charge a fee like that because the state is already collecting OHV registration fees and then distributing that to counties. And I'd like some clarification there on how that works.
Correct, in the sense they're distributing it to counties and public land entities, but not to San Juan County.
So San Juan County does not receive OHV registration fee money.
That's correct, zero. They don't like what we're doing here, and they are singling us out for retribution, and it's unacceptable. Scott, would you like to amplify on that?
Sure. Number one, the permit that's charged all goes to a fund of Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It is illegal for anybody else to charge a permit. It's only Colorado Parks and Wildlife that is allowed to charge that permit. There is a group that disperses those funds. It's a grant-based process. An amazingly amount of it goes to Forest Service and BLM, even though it's a state fund. One of the reasons we have never been able, we've gotten one grant, I think it was a $50,000 grant for snow removal. That was years ago. We could have used one 2 years ago. One of the main reasons is they say we don't toe the line with the state. Years ago, they had a problem with us because we required proof of insurance and it had to be 16 years old to operate an OHV. The state didn't require that. We finally got the state to pass a law saying counties can actually pass that law now, but because we didn't require that, this group there's a board that actually doles out the grants, and because we wouldn't toe the line and going along with the state, they wouldn't give us the grants. Now we've gone even farther than that. We want kids wearing helmets, goggles, 4 people, 4 seats. Babies have to have a car seat. The state doesn't require any of that, even though it makes total sense to do it. The state does not require it. This board feels that that's, I guess, an impingement, and they won't give us any grants. So, and the other problem is, this is conjecture, but I think that group is made up mostly of motorized people. So they're going to give grants that favor motorized type things as far as the building of new ATV trails and different things like that, but not necessarily the maintenance of, say, like county roads or something like that. We have a couple weeks ago, we talked to Barbara McLaughlin. We're going to try to work with her a little bit more about seeing really who makes up that board and why there isn't maybe some more neutral parties making up that board, and maybe allowing, get the legislature to say, hey, maybe you guys can charge a permit and charge a permit so that those monies can stay here, especially with town or county. We could use the money for mag chloride, for gravel, different things like that. It'd be wonderful. So there's a long-winded explanation, I guess, but that's the best I can do.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Austin?
Yeah, I just had a question. That board generally meets around this time of the year, don't they?
December.
Is there maybe an ability for us to go up there and represent ourselves, or is that not a worthwhile endeavor?
Ask Ernie Coleman on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have been up there before, and they didn't like our presence there. They said that they're not supporting state parks, and they're not going to help us. And it was kind of a slap in the face, and we got nothing. At one time, we got $20,000 from state parks for extreme snow shoveling or removal, and that's all.
Thank you, Ernie. So I guess, Austin, if Ernie can't sweet talk them, nobody can. Molly, are you out there? Sorry.
Yes, I am. Obviously, my phone I'm on my phone now because my computer did die. I really think it's very sad that just because we have gone above and beyond for safety, so that way we have less calls and we have less fatalities, and we're holding everybody to a stricter, higher level, that the state actually penalizes us. So I am in 100% agreement that we need to have a very candid conversation with the state on this matter, with that Parks and Recs department. However it needs to happen, whether it be through the representation that you've already asked, or if we need to try a new different olive branch. But we've put ourselves into a position where we're saying that this is the only way you can operate in our county, because we don't want you injured, and we want to make sure you understand the rules and the safety, that they should be rewarding us instead of going the other direction. So we do need to figure out how to bring that forth into a good conversation. I'd be more than willing, I don't know if anybody wants to represent the county, but I'm more than willing to try again, because I think we really should be pushing this point home.
Thank you so much, Molly. And before I get to Willie, I will tell you, Molly, I've spoke directly, personally, to the State Attorney General, Phil Weiser, in the last month. I've spoken to now-elect Senator Hickenlooper in the last month, and also Senator Bennett. and told them again what our problems are here. So thanks for your statement there. And Barbara McLaughlin, who's just been reelected last night, is also aware of it. So maybe we'll get a change in funding in the near future. Willie, did you have a thought?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to point out a couple of things that there is money from that fund that comes to San Juan County indirectly, which is actually another issue I have with this program, is that we're competing with the Forest Service and BLM for the same dollars. And it just seems bizarre that local government is competing with federal government for a state program. So BLM does get money. That hires Scotty Jackson to be out there and for the toilets to be clean. So, I mean, we have seen some benefit from it. Would BLM still have that person if they didn't get the money? Maybe not. But yeah, it's, you know, as everybody's been saying, we've kind of beat our heads against the wall with these guys. And part of it is because some of the members of the grant committee are users, OHV writers, and they have, you know, children that aren't licensed, and they just feel, there was a couple of people in particular that just felt real insulted that they couldn't bring their kids down here and ride in the back, or that their kids couldn't drive their own equipment in the backcountry. And, you know, generally, when Ernie and I have gone up, we've gone up several times before we kind of threw up our hands. And as at the most part, the committee was actually pretty sympathetic to us and understanding. And then you get the director and a couple of these other guys, and they would just turn it upside down. You know, I think it was Scott that touched on it. If we went up this funding cycle and said we wanted $50,000 to carve in a new trail, they probably would fund that, whether they like us or not. They like expanding trails, so they would give us money for that. But for maintaining, especially county roads, and that's been their other argument is, you know, it's, you know, to them it's a road, it's not a trail, and they shouldn't be spending their funding on that. But as we all know, it's one of the most popular OHV trails in the state. So it's been a struggle, and we've been hammering it at from every direction, and we will continue to do that. The other thing that they tell us is if we would put together a regional application, you know, if we teamed up with Uray County and Hinsdale County and went in for something, they might be more willing to fund something like that. But you know, at the same time they're doing that, you'll see 3 applications from San Juan National Forest, and they have no problems funding 3 individual grants from the same forest, but they don't want to fund an individual grant for a county. So.
Thank you, Willie. Jordan.
Yeah, Willie at the end very kind of addressed what I was going to bring up, was possibly teaming up with other counties like Hinsdale or something that could connect us, or getting creative. Is there a way that we could administer those fees without making them OHV specific, under like a maintenance fee or something in that realm? That would be sort of, you know, a creative loophole to that.
Jordan, we have to get creative. We agree. And so nothing is off the charts, and let's just keep talking, you know. And what Molly said is, you know, maybe we put Molly up there instead of Ernie, and she might have better results. So I think we can try anything here. Let's see, Shane.
Yeah, I guess on the topic of creativity, and what Administrator Tukey just said about, you know, if we wanted to expand terrain, there might be funds available even if they don't like us. Would that include staging areas and like a rock crawl playground within a staging area? Is that something that fund could possibly pay for in the county?
It is, and they have funded similar requests.
And Mayor Furman, if we were interested, and that's a most excellent idea, grants requests are due by December 1st. So it's not out of the realm that we could try for something like that, especially if that's a potential solution to our current, how should I say it, dilemma.
Is that something an expanded planning department would have to work on?
There you go. I like that. Scott. And
You know,
then
and Molly may be right. You send a different messenger. I actually had a long conversation with Jim Loki, and the way I understand it, snowmobiles also have to buy a sticker which goes to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who in turn give grants to our snowmobile club for the excellent job of trails grooming they do. And Jim Loki has a fantastic rapport with these guys, and they've helped buy or they've actually bought a new snowcat for the club before. They pay them by the mile for grooming, so it's a very effective program. And you know, maybe we send Jim Loki up there because he does have a good rapport with the group. Sometimes maybe just send a different messenger. I don't know, but as far as winter business, we do benefit from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife sticker as far as the snowmobile club and its grooming program. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We actually did take Jim Loki up with us the last time for that specific reason, and you know, and they all know him and they all like him, and we still didn't meet him.
I didn't know that.
all right, Jim.
Darn.
Jim Harper.
Sir, thank you. Quick question. You had said that December 1st was the deadline for submittals. Does that have to be submitted through the town or through the county, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters, Willie. Do you?
No, I don't think it doesn't matter. In fact, it could be if I remember right, not only it doesn't have to even be a government agency. It can be a Jeep club or we've done it in cooperation with the Jeep club when we worked on Poughkeepsie. We did it with the Montrose group, remember? And that one was actually successful.
So was the Jeep Club a nonprofit? Is there a component in there? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think either the town or county could submit, or we can submit a joint one for this as far as that goes.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you, sir.
Let's consider that. I know we're overwhelmed with 3 weeks to go before that deadline, but it's definitely worth considering. Any other topics? I'd like to get to the
Pete, I'd like to talk a little bit about ATVs. You know, we're in bad shape on the trails. We don't have the money to get them up to where they are safe, and there's nothing we can do about it. They're nothing but rock. We put gravel on them, the ATVs tear them up, throw the gravel off. I don't know what to do with it for sure. We can't do any more with it than we're doing. And if they want them back, they can have them.
We do have the ability to close roads to OHVs if we chose. So let's not say there's nothing we can do. We can do something. And I've proposed it several times, as Jess might remember, but there are things we can do, and we're getting to a drastic stage, guys. We have dust that comes in May and stays through October. It's unhealthy with the particulates, the noise matter, the noise. We had the school out at Eureka, and they got in a situation where they could barely get back. The students could get back to town on one of our county roads because of the congestion and the danger. I mean, we've reached the tipping point, guys, both in the town and county. So again, let's think outside the box. And when we talk about additional signage, John, or we talk about how much a sheriff's deputy is costing the town and county to try to control these things, let's consider the cost benefits. I've never really seen a study as to what our actual benefits are, but I digress. Any other topics of interest before we go to our general public? Austin?
Yeah, thanks. One other idea I've kind of had, as far as examining some of those issues, Pete, is if authorizing some kind of study for our sales tax revenue or some of our revenue sources as a joint effort between the town and the county, and seeing if there's ways. I know it's really difficult to sort through all the numbers, so it would probably involve hiring some specialty consultants or something like that. But would that be beneficial to us to kind of examine some of these revenue streams and work together and figure out exactly how much impact some of these different user groups are having, and where exactly our revenues are, our marketing dollars are most well spent, and those types of issues.
I think we have to get there, Austin. We have to know the facts. Anybody else like to bring anything up? Sally?
Oh, on this issue or a new issue?
Anything at all. I think we're sort of running towards, we've got about maybe 20 minutes left. I want to get the public who's been listening in as well, but please bring up anything.
Great. I kind of wanted to piggyback on Austin's thought about really getting into some information on the subject and using that information to guide decision making. And I was thinking about the model of the Kendall Committee a little bit, where there's a group of people who are studying an issue and going through a process and seeking community input and outside experts. And it seems like a pretty, and really trying to hold the interests of the town in their hearts and minds. And so I wonder if there's a way to look at the issue of ATVs sort of from that perspective, where there's a process set up and a group of people working on it and getting lots of ideas and working towards compromise in that way, and really trying to name what it is we want to preserve and protect, and what can be what problems can be solved, and in what ways. I just think there are a lot of really good ideas in the community, but there doesn't seem to be a great a channel to direct those.
Good thinking on that.
Pete, one thing I wanted to ask is are they everybody still happy about ATVs in town? There's been a lot of controversy about not having them in town, and controversy about having them in town. All I hear about is people putting up more signs. Signs don't stop people from doing anything. Where are we at with this thing?
Perhaps Austin would like to answer that.
Well, at least to the first part of your question there, Ernie, yeah, there's a lot of people who are really unhappy about the ATV situation in town. And even a lot of people I've talked to who are pretty big supporters of the OHV deal, recognize that this is not normal, and this is not tolerable for our quality of life anymore. That we just feel like we're being overrun. That I think it's going to be a big discussion all winter long about some of the things that we can do to kind of improve the quality of life and kind of coexist happily, and what we're going to be able to tolerate, and how we're going to try and make this situation better in the future. But this is as good a forum as any to kind of start that discussion if that's how we want to spend the rest of our time.
Well, I would say, Austin, this summer I wanted to sit on my porch and enjoy the twilight and watch the sun go down behind Kendall and Sultan. And I couldn't sit out on my porch. There were so many OHVs coming by. They were so noisy, and they were kicking up so much dust it took my enjoyment away. It's a takings. And for those of us on these routes, we have lost the ability to enjoy our property. Jess?
I would just say ditto. The only difference between you and I there, Commissioner McKay, is that you live in the business district and I live in the R2. But I am on the route and I suffer all of the effects that you've stated.
Yeah, and to think that certain routes are not going to involve citizens and residents, it's a fallacy. It's just funneling more and more people through these narrow routes when they are followed. And just to remind people, in 2018, the BLM did a study and 58,000 vehicles passed through Eureka. And guys, that's a mining road. That was built for wagons and mules, and it's just overwhelmed out there. In that same study in 2018, there were 25,000 OHV visits that started from Silverton in one summer. So we just have to deal with it, guys. Who else would like to speak?
Trustee Burrell has
I
hands up
raised
again.
my hand.
Is that Molly?
I raised my hand.
I don't see your
Yes.
sign. Sorry.
No,
Please.
it's okay because my computer died. I think we're a little bit off topic again. What does this have to do with the budgetary concerns? When we were talking about trying to get something from the Parks and Rec group, we were on topic there. Some of this needs to be saved for a larger discussion. There again, if we want to pair this with the other discussion for potentially annexation, I would be in agreement with that. But can we stay on topic with the budgetary concerns and what we are moving into the fiscal year of 2021, please?
Well, I think, and that's a good point, Molly. I had wanted to ask Jim Harper what he thought about OHVs in town, but is there any other budget components that we haven't talked about that anybody would like to address?
Are you asking that in the form of a question?
I think I'd go to Molly's first. Is there any undiscussed budgetary issue that we haven't covered tonight? Looks like Shane.
Yeah, I've got two. The first one's more me understanding context. In the IGA, the town is primarily responsible for paying certain of the services and fees, and the county is responsible primarily for paying certain of the services and fees, and then getting reimbursement from the town or county, respectively, for the 50% contribution. And then there's a provision that says, to the extent the town goes over or the county goes over 5% or greater of the agreed upon budget, that entity will notify the other of the overage. And I guess my question is, has that happened before? And is there a reason that there isn't an opportunity for further discussion and agreement? Because the way that the contract reads, the town or the county could just go over and provide notice, and then there's an obligation to make up the 50% shortfall of that overage without a discussion or agreement. And so I was just curious if that's ever been a problem in the past, and if there should just be an addition to the contract that says if you go over by more than 5%, there should be another discussion and agreement on that increase.
Yeah, if answer the mayor on this. Basically, the understanding was for unforeseen expenditures, not not just the town or the county deciding they're going to annex the planner and expect the other entity to pick up half that cost. Where the reason that that language actually got put in was a few years ago, the jail budget just went through the roof, and the town felt like it would have given, if we had notified them earlier, it would have given them a chance to prepare for that. So I mean, that was the purpose of the language, was just if we see something that's been approved, a line item that's been approved, but explodes through no fault of our own, that we notify the other agency or entity so that they're aware of it.
Did you have another question, Shane?
Yeah, I guess just a follow-up there, and I don't have an opinion on this one. I'm just curious if anyone would foresee an issue with a budget item going way over. I think right now the way that the town and county communicate is really effective, and there doesn't seem to be an issue. But in the world of hypotheticals, for example, the town could hire, a new person that was part of the planning department for $50,000 and just send the county a bill for 25, and there isn't really anything in the contract that would allow the county to say no, thank you.
Good to know.
But I mean, I think based on the way the relationships are today, it's not an issue, and I'm just wondering if that's something that we should consider in the renewal of the contract. The other topic, I don't expect any movement on tonight, but just wanted to ask the question with the outlook of sales tax potentially increasing as Silverton grows, if it grows, but also noting that sales tax is volatile and property tax may increase, but it also may decrease, and noting that it's slightly more stable. Is the division of property and sales tax among the town and the county something that both administrators are happy with? And is that something that we should explore to figure out how to better stabilize both the town and the county, and also set up both for greater upside if sales tax does increase in the future?
And I'll just answer that Administrator Tukey and I have had an initial discussion on that, and some more variables and studies to vet out before we would bring any kind of proposal for consideration. But it is something we've heard. I've heard my board of trustees ask that question, and we've begun discussion on it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
No,
I think just the context there for anyone listening, when we were looking at the downside scenario of what could possibly happen as COVID was developing, the town was in a critical financial position, and I think it caused our whole board to talk about what we would do if the worst happened. And now that we very fortunately didn't experience that, what could we do from a planning perspective so that if a similar scenario were to arise financially, we would be better prepared to manage it?
Good thinking, Shane.
Yeah, I would just say that, and I think it's worth some serious discussion, because, I think if we're going to see growth, it's going to be in the sales tax area, which is also the most unstable. I think, you can look at property tax over the last 20 years and it's gone up, but it's not, it's not even staying up with inflation. So, and it's possible as values go up and we're discovered that we may see some substantial increases. But again, I would trade your sales tax for my property tax any day, even with the extended risk. I think actually over the years, we've actually kind of acknowledged that in the intergovernmental agreement, where now we've got the 40-60 split on the sheriff and 50-50 on the others. But as one entity or the other has been behind the eight ball a little bit, if the town had a little bit better financial resource, their sales tax a little better, they would pick up maybe 60-40 in the IGA, or vice versa. If the town got hit and the county's funding looked a little better, we would pick up. So it didn't answer it directly, but it was one way to help each other out a little bit. So we have done that in the past.
Nice. Any other thoughts or comments on the budget specifically?
The one budget we didn't talk about was ambulance. And so I don't know if anybody's got any questions on that.
Do we have Kemet on the line still?
He was on earlier, but
I don't see him. Scott, you're on the ambulance board. Is the ambulance association feeling positive about the budget?
I think we're right on track, Pete.
Okay, good. Any other issues with the trustees and the commissioners? We could go outside the budget for just a minute, and then I just want to give a couple minutes to any attendees who've been listening if they'd like to comment with us. So any topics in general?
Willie, is this a good time to talk about the Ready Grant?
Yeah, I'd probably to jump in on that, John.
So town initially took the lead with Region 9 to apply for a Ready Grant, which is Rural Economic Development Initiative. We were awarded $85,000. The intention for this money was to fund a position vacated by Mel Russick in some form or fashion strategically at San Juan Development Association. Neither they or Region 9 could apply directly for this particular grant just because of its rules and regulations. So town did. We got it. We had a board discussion the other day about, okay, how to move forward with what type of employee, who would govern the employee. Would it be a direct employee of town, a direct employee of San Juan Development? And Patrick Rondinelli, who helped sponsor us and get this grant for us, which is we're very excited about and want it to be a total success here. This will be a position that really fosters existing economic development ideas, new development ideas. San Juan Development Boards Association, of which Willie and I are both a member of. Just want to make sure we're positioning the person for total success. So the question really was answered by Patrick that most likely town or county was going to have to take on an employee, and it was either a coin flip or just a judgment of where both town and county were with current responsibilities and taking it on another employee, that the board thought it best for the county to administer this position with town support. And so we have a letter from San Juan Develop Association requesting just a formality consensus of both boards that we would switch the immediate supervision and administration of this grant to the county officially. I've committed to Willie to help out on the ground here any way I can, and the San Juan Development Association board will be the primary guider and influencer of this position, but somebody had to take the formal role of employment, and that Willie volunteered / agreed to do it, but we would like both boards' consensus to move on with a letter from the San Juan Development Board formalizing that understanding.
Yes, and Shane will take you. I see that Bruce Conrad is in the attending virtual audience, so we'll give him a chance to weigh in on his particulars. Shane, what was your thought on that?
Yeah, just a super quick additional piece of context. There were over $2 million of grant applicants for this particular grant. They awarded $750,000. Silverton and San Juan County received 2 of the grants, totaling in aggregate more than $110,000. So DOLA directed a large portion of this grant funding to Silverton and San Juan County, which is awesome.
Oh, great. Listen, we've got Bruce Conrad on. Bruce, can you come online with us? We've talked about your budget and other town issues, including the OHV situation. Did you want to speak specifically on your budget, your personnel? Do you have any?
Sure. You guys have me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm on the side of the road down on the south end of the county. I apologize for having to leave the meeting earlier, but we had some bad characters in town that needed arrested. So budgetarily, our budget is not much different for 2020. You'll notice a slight increase in the salary line item, and I apologize, I don't have that paperwork with me as I ran out of the house, but I believe I'm pretty familiar with it. We have about a $13,000 increase in the salary line item, and that simply reflects getting back to the funds that were allocated for being fully staffed, whereas last year we had those funds allocated. However, with the COVID, we were asked to tighten up our bootstraps a bit and did so, and didn't bring on any personnel until much later in the year. So we were well under budget.
Yeah, Bruce, this is Pete. You've got 366, almost 367 for 2020, and then the requested 21 is 379. So you're essentially 12 to 13,000 above, which is pretty modest.
Yeah, and I do foresee that for this coming year, we'll be well under that figure again. We did get fully staffed, and that we had a couple of new deputies on board. One of those deputies realized the job wasn't for him and has already left us. Our other deputy is doing really well. I was just working with her this evening. And so point being that we also lost our part-time admin person, which is somewhat unfortunate, but also not that big a deal this time of year. So I do plan on going without through most of the winter until we find just the right person. We had a spectacular person. Unfortunately, we lost her to the court clerk's job, which is a bigger job and a better job for her. And so we're happy to see her move on to bigger and better things. So point being that I think that even taking those salary line items back up to where they should be, we'll be well under that again for this coming year, and still hoping to get back up to full staff by hiring another full-time officer prior to next summer season that will help us to better accommodate things in town.
Bruce, Trustee Barella had a comment or a question for you regarding personnel. And Molly, would you like to ask Bruce?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So what can we do to help you get the right person? I know you searched so hard to get the deputies we have, and I just don't know. What else can we do? Is there a different way that we should go about recruiting? I mean, it's sad, but it keeps happening. The cycle of attrition, we've talked about it constantly. What can we do to keep good people? And we get good people, and then they leave us. And it's really sad from the position from all of us, because you need the help. What other methods are out there that we can help you with? Because I don't want to cut your budget. I want to see that budgetary item filled with all the help you need. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts, or if anybody's got any thoughts.
Well, I sure appreciate that. Yeah, it is difficult to not run at full staff. It's definitely draining and wears you down over time. I don't know that we're doing anything wrong in the sense of not doing something to attract the right people. I think that nationwide, it's a difficult thing to hire law enforcement right now. In Colorado specifically, all departments are understaffed, and a lot of people are having a harder time than we are. Here we've had the fortune of having, we're a unique area. We're I think a pretty good law enforcement job with pretty compatible salary. So I think that it's not anything we're doing wrong. We've had a number of folks apply for these positions and just haven't met the folks that we would want in those positions until just recently. So it's really just a matter of keeping our feelers out and trying to find the right people. And then, it's always a gamble. I felt like Tanner Sylvie was really the right guy and really a good guy for the job, and he turned out to be so. Unfortunately, the job just, kept him up at nights, and then that's nothing we can plan for. So it is what it is. You can't train someone in academy or in field training, what that anxiety level can be for someone. So it's just always just kind of a gamble, and we'll keep plugging away and try and find the right people and make it work. So
Thank
that's
you,
kind of all we
Bruce.
can do right now.
Bruce, do you have any other thoughts on your budget before we close out the meeting?
So the only other thing I saw that was bumped up a little bit was $3,000 from $15,000 to $18,000 in our cost for dispatch services. And that's just something that's kind of beyond our control, and we certainly still receive a spectacular deal. I'm not sure if you all we have some new members who may not be fully aware of how that situation works, but essentially, because we cover so many calls on Highway 550, that is essentially Colorado State Patrol's territory, we handle most everything that happens up here until it comes to a fatality or a commercial vehicle accident. So in exchange for dealing with most of their territory up here, because they're short-staffed, they give us a really good deal on dispatching, and that did get bumped up a little bit this year, and that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's still quite an exceptional deal. We used to essentially have a position that cost us about $60,000 a year for covering dispatch during the day and doing some admin, and then still have some fees paid toward dispatch. And so now we have things more consolidated. It's a better dispatching system than mixing it back and forth between a local person and the folks in Montrose that take care of us, and it's still really, really reasonable.
Yeah, nice way to describe that, Bruce. It went from 15 to 18,000. So Bruce, down on your gross budget for 2020, you had 473,800. Let's call it 474,000. And this year you're asking or will receive 483. Let's call it 485. So what a modest increase on your part.
Yeah, and as hopefully as usual during my tenure, we won't be using all of that. We try and remain very fiscally responsible. As you can see, we're at just about 50% of our budget thus far this year, which was, we pulled up our bootstraps a bit more than usual this year because of the COVID situation. So hopefully we'll be in similar shoes again next year, where we get fully staffed and still are able to return some monies back to the entities that help to fund us. So I don't think I have anything else budgetarily to share with you all, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Bruce before we go? I think we're good, Bruce. We had a good discussion, unfortunately without you, but I think we've covered it. So thanks for jumping on, and thanks for serving us down in the South County tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. I want to get to the attendees for just a minute. We've had people that have been listening the entire time. And Lisa Branner, I'm not sure how to bring people on if anybody would like to speak. Is there anybody in the virtual audience that would like to comment or raise a question?
So those of you that are listening on the phone, dial *9 and that will raise your hand. If you are in the webinar, you should have a hand at the bottom of your screen, a hand icon. You can click that to raise your hand and we'll activate you to speak.
All right. Don't hear or see anybody. We have Bill Dodge out in California, Deanne Gallegos, Information Officer, Lisa Adair, Planner, Todd Bove with the town, and then Molly on the phone. So I think we might be at the end. Jim, I would circle back to you for one last question. I know you've been wanting me to get back to you. So we were talking about OHVs in town. And what's your feeling? Is it time to maybe clear the streets and get the community a little more quiet and back to normal? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Willie, I believe Willie had his hand up first.
You outrank him.
Pete, I think that's a great question, and I thank you for asking it. I think with all things in life, we need to find a balance, and I think this is a topic that we, as individuals and as a community, need to find that balance as well. What I find really troubling more than anything else is that you've never invited me over to sit on your porch.
Oh, you're a genius. Very
So,
smart.
when that happens, we can talk further, I guess.
Oh, let's do it at 6 a.m. before the noise starts.
Oh, goodness. I don't know about that.
Thanks. Thank you, Jim. Willie, any final thoughts before we go tonight?
I just had one thing, circling back to the READY grant. I just need to know if there's any opposition from either the town board or county commissioners as far as transferring that grant from the town to the county for me to administer. I've got to administer the one for MSI anyway. So I think it just works better if we put them both under the county.
Since no one can see me, I'm in favor.
Me too.
Okay, then we'll put together, or we've got a letter to get the chairman signature on to get the bill up. So.
All right then. I think we've covered it, guys. Oh, Jim?
I do, in all sincerity, I do have two closing comments. One, big congratulations to Austin, who's below me on the screen. So way to go. And another one to you, Commissioner McKay, for your service, for your dedication to this county, for being a great friend and neighbor. And really, I have enjoyed the way you chair these meetings. And I mean that in all sincerity. I love it. So thank you.
Much appreciated. It's been a pleasure. It's 20 years, 5 terms. Time to move aside, and we have Austin coming up, and he'll serve the community well as he already has. So thank you, Jim.
And I do expect that invitation.
You got it. Yeah, maybe tomorrow. Kelly,
Bruce
yeah.
had his hand up.
Pardon me?
Bruce Conrad had his hand up.
Okay, Bruce, did you have a comment or a need?
I do, and I please tell me if this is misplaced, and that sounded like the cap of a long meeting, and I apologize. But before I was called away earlier, the town board was speaking about film office funding questions. I wondered if this might be a place to put in a couple of comments there, if y'all don't mind.
Yes, I think Molly had brought up the cost benefit component, and perhaps John Ryder had commented on it. So please take a minute.
Thank you. The item the concept that was getting kicked around was potentially the film office had asked the town for anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to help support the film office in kind of getting off the ground, which is only a few months old now. And the thought kicked around was potentially waiving or actually what fees are brought in returned to the film office. And I'd like you all to just consider that the film office benefit to the community is not in the fees we bring in for film permits. It's the money that the folks spend in town. And for instance, again, we've only been off the ground for a few months here now, and we've got close to $30,000 easily recorded spent in the community. So what's being asked for right now is not necessarily helped by that policy, in that you're going to wait for us to bring in more film projects that will purchase fees, and then those fees come back to the film office. What's really needed in the film office right now is to get a viable website off the ground and to take care of some administrative costs. I've got my own money into it. I know that Rebecca has a ton of her own money into it. We're really trying hard to keep this film office going and have a tremendous benefit to the community. And while I certainly appreciate that you're supportive and willing to try and return some funds to the film office based on fees, it's really not about the fees we bring in. It's about the impact we bring into the community and the tax monies collected on what's spent throughout the community. So I just ask you to consider that as you move forward in your budgeting session. I know that budgets are tough and everybody's trying to cut where they can, but I think this is one area where the returns will pay back exponentially.
I'm glad you could come in with that tonight, Bruce. So your trustees are listening closely. Final thoughts? Anybody? Ernie?
Yeah, Frey, I want to give you one. And one I want to give is thank you, Pete, for your years of service. We've been up and down, and I'll never forget you.
Thanks,
I do
Ernie.
want to congratulate Scott and Austin on their position. We'll work with them. Thank you guys very much.
Nice.
Thank you, Ernie.
Yep.
So I want to address something really quickly.
Yes, please.
In reference to what Bruce was saying, I had said, would the $2,000, the initial donation that's being asked for, equal itself out in reference to the amount coming in for the fees? And then it was Mayor Furman's idea to actually like refund them and move forward. So I think that after Bruce's explanation, that we need to go back and re-examine what we were thinking in reference to that. Thank you for speaking, Bruce. And yes, thank you, Pete, for your years. Good luck to you, Austin, and Scott being reelected. I hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Molly. And I'm glad you were able to comment on that clarification for Bruce and the department, film department. So with that, let's call it an evening, guys. I think we did really well. Let's try to do this quarterly. And as Molly said, we were focused on budget tonight, but we need to continue to talk on all topics. So let's call it a night, guys. And thank you so much. And as Molly said, enjoy your evening. And thanks for my
Thank you all very much. Thank you,
All
Pete.
right.
Thanks,
Good night,
Pete.
everybody.
Have a good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.